In the opening scene, a whole army of soldiers goes after the infamous corpse god using nothing but their rusty swords, and they pay a massive price for it. Dozens of soldiers lose their lives to that merciless freak, and that's when the savior, 𝐂𝐨𝐴𝐴𝐴, also known as the Calamity Crusher, shows up to take on the dangerous creature. Once he comes face to face with that demonic piece of garbage, 𝐂𝐴𝐴 unleashes his most powerful spells and magic attacks to try and bring the demon down, while the other clerics who brought him from the church watch everything go down. As the fight heats up, the clerics notice the labyrinth growing and start cursing the necromancer for bringing more dead people into their world. After blasting the big demon with a barrage of magic sword strikes, 𝐂𝐴𝐴 pauses for a sec to see what the necromancer's next move is. Noticing the pause, the necromancer pulls off a diabolical spell that shocks everyone in the labyrinth. To keep the hero busy, he sends a dragon to kill 𝐂𝐴𝐴, but big surprise, 𝐂𝐴𝐴 takes out the dragon without even breaking a sweat. Moving right along, 𝐂𝐴𝐴 goes up against his archenemy and keeps impressing the clerics who are watching the fight from a safe distance. At first, the clerics were worried about the hero's life since the necromancer had already summoned an army to defend himself. But 𝐂𝐴𝐴 takes a moment to relive his tragic backstory inside his own head. After taking down a second dragon that the necromancer sent, 𝐂𝐴𝐴 activates his evil eyes and uses them to see the spirits and souls of the people the necromancer had killed in the past. The necromancer notices this and tries to reason with 𝐂𝐴𝐴, saying he pretty much has the same kind of eyes. But as always, 𝐂𝐴𝐴 never negotiates with terrorists. So he annihilates a chunk of the necromancer's army and keeps killing every last one of those bastards until he finally uses his last brain cell to crush the rest of the skeletons under some rocks. With just him and the necromancer's giant skeleton left, 𝐂𝐴𝐴 does everything he can to make the guy see reason, trying to talk some sense into him before they throw down. He tells the skeleton to stop being such a jerk, messing around with the corpses and souls of the people he killed, and to turn over a new leaf and become a better person. Having lived for almost a century, the necromancer knows it's way too late for him to go back and be good, so he summons new sigils, some that even 𝐂𝐴𝐴 doesn't recognize, and starts chanting enchantments for the final showdown. 𝐂𝐴𝐴 gets ready for a serious last attack, and even gets some help from one of the clerics behind him. In the end, 𝐂𝐴𝐴 and the others manage to win the fight. Before the necromancer could even blink, he finds himself struggling to remember the last thing that happened to him. After a few more flashes and blurry visions, the necromancer suddenly wakes up in an alley in modern-day Japan in the body of a teenage high school student. As he tries to process this new environment, the necromancer touches his throat and finds some bloodstains there. "What the hell happened to me?" he says as he stumbles toward the light at the end of the alley. Eventually, he steps out onto the street and just stands there with his mouth hanging open, realizing how modern and electronic the world around him is. Completely unable to figure out what the hell he's seeing, the necromancer just wanders around like a lost puppy. What he didn't know was that the teenage body he'd possessed had just been killed by a group of elite mercenary assassins who were there to recover the body. One of the agents, Takumi, gets worried when he notices the guy they just killed walking around like nothing happened. To get a better look, he has his drone confirm that the guy is definitely the same high school student they just offed. Confused, Takumi calls off the body recovery and just watches the kid with the bloodstains on his throat standing there totally clueless. Meanwhile, the necromancer, now in the student's body, accepts the fact that he's been reincarnated into another world, except this time the world he's in enjoys lasting eternal peace. Just as he's trying to think about his previous world, two cops show up after noticing him wandering around and start speaking Japanese to him. At first, the necromancer couldn't understand the language, but he keeps his cool until he uses his magic to figure out what they're saying before answering their questions. Apparently, the cops were worried about the blood on his shirt and wanted to help him. They ask for his name, and the necromancer gives them the original owner's name, Puka Shinoyama. Unfortunately, just as the cops are about to help him, a strange, hot woman steps on one of them and drags Puka back into the alley he came from. As they run through the streets, two weirdos who call themselves Ara and Aya notice the strange scene but decide to ignore it and just enjoy their day. Back in the alley, the crazy woman introduces herself as Misaki Sakimiya and asks if Puka remembers her. While Puka has more flashes and visions, Misaki lifts him in the air and shakes him hard, and then she pulls him close to her chest and makes him feel it. Once she's sure he's really alive, she gets to the real reason she's there, to kill him. While Puka thanks her for saving his life, Misaki pulls out the gun she used to murder the original Puka and attacks the necromancer, 𝐂𝐴𝐴. The necromancer, aka the new Puka, recognizes Misaki from the flashbacks he had of her and runs to save his own skin. Meanwhile, Takumi tries to feel better by accepting a contract to kill a kid. After running for a while, Puka finally finds a place to hide. While he's trying to figure a way out of his situation, Misaki catches up to him and attacks. In the first half of the fight, Puka dodges and blocks all of Misaki's attacks. But as soon as Puka tries to run, Misaki stabs his leg with an iron bar. Puka gets messed up for a bit and decides to go on the offensive and take down this crazy chick who's coming after him. To do that, he throws one of her knives back at her and lures her deeper into the building they're in. Soon enough, Misaki shows up and tells him some stuff about the place. Turns out that building used to be a Yakuza execution ground, and most people avoid it precisely because so many people got killed there. Misaki then asks if he can see the ghosts in the room they're in, and Puka finally uses his evil eyes to take a peek at the dozens of ghosts hanging around the crazy woman who's after him. After mumbling some more nonsense, Misaki goes for the final attack. This time, Puka, or the necromancer, already had his magical dexterity back and even better. So he takes his stance and stabs Misaki with one of his huge skeleton hands before pinning her to the wall. He figures this should be punishment enough for her, messing with human lives like that. While Puka enjoys his time in the new world, 𝐂𝐨𝐴 and the other clerics are struggling to figure out what happened during that last attack. 𝐂𝐨𝐴 was pretty sure he'd seen the necromancer's soul, but at the last second, his evil eyes couldn't track it anymore. Almost like it had vanished into thin air. At the same time, the necromancer regains full consciousness in his new body and thanks Misaki for giving him another shot at a peaceful life. He then starts mumbling more nonsense before finally realizing that he accidentally killed Misaki during his last attack. Every attempt to wake up his assassin is useless, and after a while, he gets scared out of his mind about what might happen next. Before the main story continues, the necromancer tells us how his sad life started by being one of the rare kids born with evil eyes. When his parents saw that their son was born with those evil eyes, they sold him off to the court sorcerers, where he was trained to become a necromancer and fight for the empire. For years, the necromancer fought bravely for the empire's success, but eventually politics and greed led to his downfall. Even after losing his place in the empire, the necromancer tried to live a peaceful life. So he resigned himself to living alone in a cave for all eternity with his ugliness and everything. Over the years, the necromancer noticed some lost kids living in the caves with him, and he made sure to feed them fruit and meat every day. Even though he never showed his face, the kids still appreciated whoever was helping them, and the necromancer was more than happy to help them. Eventually, the kids found the necromancer's hideout and welcomed him with open arms, playing with him whenever they could. Life was good for a while, until stupid humans found out about the kids' relationship with the ugly necromancer. Unable to accept that kind of relationship, they grabbed all the kids, called them defiled and impure, and killed them to purify their land of those evil children. When the necromancer found out about the betrayal, he avenged the kids by killing every last bastard who murdered them. Once he was done, he went back to living alone, learning everything he could about reincarnation spells. Since he couldn't die from natural causes anymore, he waited centuries for a hero to show up and kill him so he could finally complete his reincarnation spell and get out of that cold, cruel world. With 𝐂𝐨𝐴's arrival, his mission was complete, and now he's dealing with his first death in the new world. In the present, Puka does everything he can to wake Misaki up, but unfortunately, she's been gone for a long time. Before doing anything else, he breaks down over how stupidly powerful he is, then pulls himself together. Meanwhile, Takumi has a hard time accepting what the hell just happened in front of him. He soon gets a call from his employer, Lisa, who asks why he's taking so long to deliver the last job. Takumi sends her a video of the incident with Puka and Misaki and waits for her response. Meanwhile, Misaki relives her happiest moments as her life slowly slips away. Turns out, Misaki wasn't always as crazy as she is now. Born to a loving mom and dad, Miss always experienced parental love from the start. But everything changed one night when a serial killer attacked and murdered her parents right in front of her. For years, she conditioned her mind to become like that of a serial killer before finally tracking down and killing the bastard who murdered her parents. After finishing the mission of her life, she still wasn't satisfied, even though she was already working for the organization at the time. Misaki still wanted to know what it was like to kill good people and get away with it. She didn't give a crap what others said about her. Instead, she went after jobs that involved killing people she had no beef with. So when a hit came in to kill a kid, she took it right away and slit his throat without a second thought. Surprisingly, she felt nothing and still wanted more. To reach the peak of success in her life, she realized she had to kill herself. With that in mind, she jumped onto the edge of a skyscraper and got ready to jump and end it all. But just as she's about to do it, Takumi calls her and convinces her to come back and finish the job she was sent to do. At first, Misaki was shocked to learn that the kid she'd killed before was back and active, but eventually she pulled herself together and ran to finish the job. Before reliving the rest of her memories, she comes back to life and finds herself lying on the floor near Puka and Takumi's drone. She demands an explanation from Puka, but again, Puka is so shocked by the size of her bust that he can't give any. Misaki finally asks Puka to explain how she's alive, but Puka informs her that she's been reborn through magic and isn't really back to life yet. It's safer to call her a zombie, since Lisa pats her down to confirm she's dead. So the question on Mrs. Mind now is, what happened while she was dead? Well, it turns out that 40 minutes before her resurrection, Takumi, the info broker and behind-the-scenes guy of the organization, called Lisa and her goons to the scene so they could check things out for themselves. When they got there, Lisa is shocked to see sigils and big skeleton parts scattered all over the room. She double-checks to make sure she's not hallucinating before letting Puka finish whatever he's doing to Misaki's body. Once he finishes infusing Misaki's fatal wound with some magic, he turns around and demands to know who the people in front of him are. Lisa introduces herself and says she and her friends are Misaki's buddies, and she asks Puka to explain what happened to their dear friend. After telling them how he killed Misaki in the first place, Puka goes on to explain how he used resurrection magic to fix her body and put her back together. when Lisa and the others hear Puka talk about magic, they freeze in their tracks and ask the imposter to provide more proof that he was actually using magic. Puka, the necromancer, soon finds out the hard way that magic doesn't exist in the world he's currently in. To save his own skin, he undoes the sigils of the spell and tries to make what just happened seem like a mass hallucination. Of course, Lisa knows she's not hallucinating, so she confronts him and tells him to cut the crap. In response, Puka summons his attack spells and gets ready to wipe out everyone in that room. Before things get violent, their kinda dumb leader Lisa asks for a timeout to think things over. Puka gives her the time she asked for and looks at the weird weapons her goons are carrying. Just as the silence was about to become deafening, the group hears fire alarms going off right outside. And even though they should probably deal with the emergency, they choose to keep their dear friend company. Takumi does a little investigating and soon finds out there's a fire at the 𝐂𝐨𝐧𝐭𝐴 building, which is an orphanage where Yakuza orphans and different kids are taken care of. Puka gets worried when he hears about the kids in danger, so he asks Lisa to tell him more about the incident, which she does. After hearing enough, he immediately asks to be taken there so he can save the kids. When asked why he cares so much, the guy tells them it's because he feels the kids shouldn't have to suffer the same pain he felt when he was burned before. Lisa, satisfied with his answer, tells Takumi to take the guy to the building. Puka slides across the city buildings to reach the 𝐂𝐴𝐧𝐭𝐴 building. As soon as he gets there, he assesses the situation and feels the kids' life force. Before Takumi's drone could even blink, Puka throws himself into the burning room and infuses the souls of the dead parents into skeletons so they can carry their kids to safety. Once that's done, Puka gets out of the media's sight and continues doing his thing. Takumi checks the media and finds the skeletons there, but before he can do anything, he takes his time trying to understand their new friend. He warns Lisa to stay away from that bastard. But then Lisa tells him to haul ass to that building so they can witness Misaki come back to life. With Miss back on her feet, Puka starts discussing his next step with Lisa, achieving true peace. He asks Lisa to tell him the best way to get such a thing in this world, and Lisa tells him he needs to have a lot of power and money. Then she asks him to reveal his modus operandi for being there, and Puka tells her he's just looking to live a peaceful life in whatever world he's in. Having heard the guy open his heart and soul, Lisa is moved and offers to help him out. She formally introduces herself as the assassin broker and assigns Misaki and Takumi to be his new goons while they help him navigate life in modern Tokyo. Upon finding out about his new job, Takumi breaks down in tears and goes to join Puka in the middle of the city. A few days later, Puka, Takumi, and Misaki settle into their new hideout. While Misaki relaxes watching a video of the skeletons posted online, Takumi and Puka work on setting up their new stuff. At one point during the move, Takumi gets worried and asks Misaki if she feels weird living with the person who killed her. On the contrary, Miss is pretty excited to live with a weirdo like her. If anything, she likes Puka's presence and respects him for helping her fulfill her last wish to kill her. Takumi sighs and regrets asking that question, but soon gets over it and discusses some things with Puka. Puka, on the other hand, ignores everything he's saying and instead thanks him for helping him adapt to this strange new world. Takumi has a mini freakout and asks Puka if he's really okay with staying in the torture building. Puka tells him everything's fine, but then Takumi asks about the original Puka's family and how he plans to string them along indefinitely. Well, Puka says he's already fooled them by making them believe the original Puka went on a journey of self-discovery since it's summer and actual vacation time. To seal his alibi, Puka pulls out postcards and promises to send them to the family every month so they know he's okay. On top of that, he's kinda lost about what to do next since he can't even remember the last names of the original Puka's family. Well, Takumi encourages him to try to figure out how to remember the names. But again, Puka just can't because of the way the real Puka died. Moving on, Puka talks about the similarities between his original world and the one he's in now. Even though he doesn't give a crap about the similarities, Puka is happy that the 𝐂𝐴𝐴 region doesn't exist in this world because the discrimination would be too much for him. Once they get past that, Puka reveals the name he was called in his previous world, the Corpse God, and informs the other two that he needs to track down who wanted Puka dead in the first place. Takumi encourages him to ask Lisa about it, but Puka says she had to keep the secret for security reasons. Despite that, he still plans to find out on his own and will only force her to talk as a last resort. Takumi grumbles some more nonsense before going back to his desk to continue working. While Misaki plays with toy skeletons, Takumi talks about lemons and quickly changes the subject to avoid revealing secrets. After that, the duo talks about the soul of the original Puka, which the necromancer had fused into one of Takumi's lost drones from the day before. Noticing the dirty trick, Takumi gets suspicious of Puka and tries to paint him as the villain for messing with human lives like that before he gets what he wants. However, Misaki gets a visitor and goes out to see him. Digging deeper, Miss finds out that the visitor is a former Yakuza member who wants protection for a short time so he won't be killed by a rival gang. After hearing him out, Misaki refuses to help him. But when Puka shows up out of nowhere and takes the job, Misaki changes her mind. So later that night, Puka and the visitor hit up one of the gang's hideouts and lurk until she loses patience. Eventually, Misaki goes for the final attack, only to realize she's been ambushed by those bastards. What's even worse is that the so-called visitor was also in on the ambush. In the end, he shoots her in the back and reveals his true identity.
Thinking he'd gotten rid of this Misaki chick, the visitor turns around and comes face to face with his worst nightmare.
An angry Puka, who had just accepted the revenge request from the souls of the kids those scumbags killed, warns that Misaki isn't dead yet, so their revenge mission went straight to hell. After that, he gives the kids' souls free reign to do whatever they want with those bastards. The souls conjure up a giant ball of earth and crush every last one of the gangsters who killed them. With the job done, Puka the necromancer lets the souls rest in peace. In the next scene, Puka and Misaki are back at the hideout for post-mission analysis. While Misaki admires her naked body, Takumi continues the operation by painting Puka the necromancer as the big villain of the story. This time though, Puka wins the argument and makes Takumi look like a complete idiot for trying so hard. In the end, Takumi realizes that he and Misaki have been scumbags the whole time. They finally wrap up the conversation, and Takumi steps away to a more private place to make his report to Lisa. After hearing everything that happened, Lisa thanks Takumi for his help and assures him that her people are taking care of the few who escaped the attack. Meanwhile, Puka and Misaki are seen arguing about vampires and the possibility of turning her into one. After the call, Takumi calms down and nearly pees himself from fright when he hears Misaki and Puka's conversation. Elsewhere, Lisa is getting a delicious Swedish massage from two masseuses when she suddenly gets a call from a well-known number. When she answers, the person on the other end tries to get her back on track by telling her to kill Puka. This time, Lisa refuses the request and puts the client relationship on hold for a while until they recover. After the call, she pours glasses of wine for herself and her two girls, celebrating the new beginning. While the girls struggle to understand what the hell is going on, Lisa gets a tingly feeling, anticipating what's next with Puka in town. In another part of the city, Arazi and his partner Iwa are seen at a well-known bar, doing what they do best, drinking. While Arazi tries to beg the bouncers to cut them some slack for not paying for their beer, Ia just sits at the counter chatting with the bartender, waiting for Lisa to show up and sort out the night's mess. After some arguing, the drunk harasses one of the waitresses and gets smacked on the head by some crazy guy who thinks he's a zombie. Back at the hideout, Puka and Takumi discuss Misaki's new powers after her zombification. Apparently, she can now paralyze a person with just a bite, since her saliva contains a paralytic fluid that can take down even Puka. Without a second thought, Miss bites Puka to test the powers, and when she sees they work on the poor guy, she goes after Takumi. Takumi refuses to get bitten and runs off. Then two cops almost catch a weirdo trying to destroy the sphere that Puka and the souls created in the hideout. They get there and only find the remains of the earlier scumbags. Meanwhile, Ara takes care of the guys he was begging before and is soon called to investigate the crime scene. Shortly after seeing them leave on the monitor, Takumi keeps asking Puka random questions about his old world. Puka starts wondering if this world is so different from his, while Misaki brags about her new paralyzing powers. Then Takumi asks about the technique the necromancer used to take down those bastards, and Puka says he just incapacitated them, not killed them. At the same time, Iwa and Arasi arrive at the crime scene and prepare to study the arcane secrets behind the attack on the hideout. After collecting everything they need to build a case, the two cops go back to the station to brief their recruits. Turns out Iwa and Arasi are members of an elite Tokyo police investigation squad, tasked with solving crazy cases that regular cops can't handle. As the meeting begins, Ia mentions the only 3 criminals they still haven't caught. 2 of them, the fire-spitting bug and Lemmings, are directly involved in the fire at the children's building and the human knot they found in the hideout the night before. For now, they believe the fire-spitting bug started the daycare fire and Lemmings made the human knot, since one of the footprints at the scene matched his. When someone on the team asks if the skeleton in the online videos is real or fake, Aya's third partner answers the idiot and warns everyone in the room that the skeletons are definitely real. Plus, if they were fake, it would mean all those online videos are worthless. Even so, they still need to figure out how the kids got out of the burning building alive and without help. To avoid panic in the group, Ia reassures everyone that the criminal is human, not a sorcerer or fire-breathing monster, so they can relax. He believes they'll catch him just like they caught the others. Meanwhile, Puka is seen infusing the original Puka's spirit into a shark plushie so Takumi can have his drone back. As soon as he finishes the ritual, he appeals to the real Puka's soul and asks for a little more time in his body before things go back to normal. While the necromancer and the original Puka seal the deal, Misaki runs into the room and hugs the cute stuffed animal before shoving it between her melons. The pervert glows a vibrant pink, giving Takumi the clear impression that he's enjoying every second with Misaki's melons. And Takumi asks Puka why the plushie still can't talk. Puka explains that he'd need a ton of mana to create a real humanoid vocal cord. Luckily, he's in a building full of troubled souls and spirits, so gathering mana shouldn't be a huge problem for him. Confused, Takumi asks him to elaborate, and Puka says he can simply harvest the negative feelings of the souls trapped in that building and turn them into mana. As the conversation goes on, Puka warns Takumi that there's another way for him to recharge. When asked how, Puka says they just need to buy precious stones like diamonds, sapphires, and the like, and bam, his mana would be recharged and he'd be ready to roll. Takumi lets Puka finish his speech before taking him to a jewelry store to see how insanely overpriced those stones are in real life. When Puka sees it with his own eyes, his jaw drops at how expensive a single stone is in this new world. Before leaving, he picks one out, buys it for over 3 million yen, and heads out. On the way home, Misaki asks why he doesn't just steal the mana from inside this stone, and Puka says that would hurt the store owner. Takumi soon gets tired of listening to the two teenagers chatter about boring stuff. However, just as he's about to think about their next move, his worst nightmare, Arasi, shows up on the corner and captures one of Takumi's drones. Meanwhile, Iwa and his goons visit Lisa's bar to interrogate her and her employees. After the formalities, Aya seriously asks Lisa everything she knows about the previous incidents and her organization's involvement in them. Since he doesn't have a warrant, Lisa decides to keep her mouth shut. Shortly after taking down one of Takumi's drones, Arasi turns to the two teenagers behind him and apologizes for scaring them. While Misaki and Puka try to figure out what's going on, he speaks into the drone, hoping for a response from Takumi. Then Puka opens his big mouth and scolds Arasi for destroying his friend's drone. Surprised, Arasi steps closer to the teenager to warn him how dangerous Takumi really is. He calls the info broker the worst kind of scum and tells Puka to be careful of that traitor. Having heard every insult that bastard hurled at Takumi, Puka gets pissed and activates some of his power, which not only pushes Arasi back, but also sparks his curiosity. After dodging the first bullet, Arasi gets super interested in meeting Puka, so he demands that Puka introduce himself. Takumi had already figured out Arasi's trick, so he warns Puka not to answer or show his powers. Hearing that, Puka stays quiet while Arasi keeps scolding him for hanging out with dangerous strangers. Puka answers one of his questions and ends up digging himself even deeper. To keep Arasi at a distance, Takumi calls him and tries to get him off Misaki and Puka's trail. While talking to him, the info broker positions several drones in the alley and threatens to post compromising videos of him harassing teenagers online if he doesn't stop talking to them. Arasi appreciates Takumi's extreme ways and wishes he were there to see Puka and Misaki's faces, while he exposes the info broker's true nature. With Takumi still on the phone, Arasi exposes how he's a loose-lipped traitor who'd sell out his allies' info just to save his own skin. Even after hearing all that, Puka refuses to judge Takumi and instead turns the tables on Arasi, calling him the villain. Arasi notices the shift in Puka right away, so he arms himself and stays alert for whatever comes next. What he didn't know was that Misaki was already behind him, ready to attack. When he notices her, it's already too late because Misaki kicks his gut and bolts out of the alley with Puka. After recovering from the hard kick, Arasi gives chase, only to realize they've already disappeared. Eventually, he gets up and leaves the alley, hoping to make it to Lisa's bar on time. After the run-in with Arasi, Takumi warns Puka that everything Arasi said about him before was true, so he shouldn't be surprised if that happens to him sooner than he thinks. In response, Puka says he's already pretty used to hard asses, so it's no problem for him. Takumi then asks a few more questions about Puka's old world, and he answers. In the next scene, Arasi shows up at the station and asks his partner, Aika, to run the footprint on his stomach through the database. Aika is a little shocked to see a woman's footprint on his belly, but soon realizes it's no surprise that the print matches the one they found at the crime scene. As soon as Arasi finds that out, he smiles because he's found another person of interest for his new case. During the next meeting, two other random station officers talk about the crazy things they've seen Li-Mings do over the years. The older officer tells the younger ones that he once witnessed Li-Mings himself take down 8 guys, armed with machine guns, while they were all shooting at him. The most diabolical thing about that criminal is that he didn't even dodge the bullets. He just let himself get hit while snapping each of their necks in that fight. So, fighting and capturing a criminal like Li-Mings is something best left to the professionals. Around that time, Iowa is seen drinking until he's about to pass out, waiting for Lisa to reveal any valuable info about any of the 3 psychopathic criminals currently on the loose. After mumbling nonsense for the umpteenth time that night, Iwa starts talking about the skeletons in the burning building. From the info he was putting out, Lisa and the others could tell that Iwa was suspicious of something strange inside their building. To get him off Puka's trail, they need to warn the teenager not to show show up at the bar out of nowhere. Unfortunately, before they could warn him, Puka and Misaki walk into the bar like it's nothing. 𝐂𝐴 notices them right away and warns them about underage drinking. However, when he gets a message from Arasi describing the new person of interest, Misaki, 𝐂𝐴 gets curious and starts asking questions. Meanwhile, Arasi and a bunch of force goons secretly head to the bar and Takumi sees them approaching. While he tries to call Lisa to warn her about Arasi and his guys, Misaki makes friends with her new buddy, 𝐂𝐴. Puka is also seen enjoying a glass of orange juice when Arasi shows up at the bar and walks in. Misaki notices him and calls him a pervert for harassing her before, and she plays along for a while until things get serious and he stands up to start the interrogation. Well, just as they're about to start questioning the kids, the lights go out, and Puka does his best to get Misaki out of there. Before he can do anything, Puka feels a sharp tingle in his throat and looks up at the ceiling to witness the horror unfolding before him. Turns out Lemmings was in the same room with them, and the aura that bastard gave off made even the necromancer fear for his life. Lisa lights a candle to give a little light, but it's not enough to calm the rising desperation and shock the others feel from being in the same space as the devil himself. As for Lemmings, he takes his time choosing his targets before attacking. Moments before chaos sets in, Lisa and the cops try to figure out Lemmings' final plan. Arasi, though, soon gets tired of waiting while one of the most wanted criminals is right in front of them. As soon as the confrontation begins, Misaki warns Puka not to underestimate 𝐂𝐴. Puka, who could see the dangerous aura around 𝐂𝐴, keeps his guard up. Soon, the whole room goes into chaos as 𝐂𝐴 sheds the first blood, taking down as many cops as he can before the lights come back on. In the middle of the fight, Arasi isolates Lemmings and manages to corner him somewhere in the bar. Lemmings, on the other hand, ignores Arasi for now and focuses on his main target, Misaki. Turns out Lemmings had infiltrated the station without them knowing earlier that day to investigate the owner of the footprints he found at the crime scene. Realizing the footprints belonged to Misaki, he planned this attack just to capture her. So after keeping Arasi at bay, he captures Misaki and gets ready to bounce out of there. Puka tries to save his dear Misaki, but then stops himself from using all his powers to avoid drawing attention to himself. Investigating his attacker further, Puka realizes that Lemmings isn't human again. He's already surpassed all humans in that world and is way stronger than even Puka at a basic level. To avoid suspicion, his only available option is to run and save his own life. Even so, Puka still can't bring himself to abandon Misaki just like that. So he attacks Lemmings with his necromancer powers in total darkness and rescues Misaki from his clutches. Lisa blows out the candle she lit earlier to give Puka some time to attack and catch Lemmings. Over the next few minutes, Puka uses every trick in his book to try to capture the criminal, but nothing works. Eventually, Lemmings recaptures Misaki and pauses the fight for a bit to ask some questions about the attack. At first, Misaki refuses to say anything, but then she gets real and persuades Lemmings to lower his guard while she bites his finger, hoping to paralyze him with her fluid. Unfortunately, Lemmings' bandages were too strong for her to bite through. Despite the setback, Misaki still stabs Lemmings in the leg with a fork infused with her saliva. Shortly after, Puka steps in to deliver the final blow to the crazy criminal. He unleashes one of his strongest necromancer spells on Lemmings and ends the fight right there. Moments later, the lights come back on, and the whole bar area is silent with trash everywhere. In the aftermath of the fight, 𝐂𝐴 and Arasi complain about the outcome and how unprepared they were for this criminal. Lisa, on the other hand, steps in to calm them down so they don't trash the place a second time. Elsewhere, Lemmings is seen in his boss's office, giving a post-action report to the crime syndicate leader he works for. Reporting the events at the bar, Lemmings the mute gets very close to his boss and points to a photo on the desk, as if trying to say something. Since he's unable to speak, the boss does his best to figure out what his best agent is trying to tell him. Meanwhile, Misaki and Puka discuss the criminal behind the attack on the bar. Lemmings with Takumi, who calls the crazy mute a silent but deadly assassin with the ability to enter and leave any building without leaving a trace. As soon as they finish that conversation, Takumi talks about the mana Puka spent to fend off Lemmings the night before, and Puka assures him he's already recovered it all. After hanging up the phone, Puka thanks Misaki as they're about to cross the street for having his back there with Lemmings. Misaki tells him not to sweat it since she was just returning the favor for him bringing her back to life in the first place. Hearing those words, Puka remembers one of his lessons with his master over a century ago about helping others and not expecting anything in return. After his quick memory recap, Puka makes his decision and humbly asks Misaki, Takumi, and the original Puka to teach him more about this strange world he's in so he doesn't get into trouble again. Later that night, Lemmings' boss finds out that Puka is still alive. With this new info, he makes new plans to recapture him and, if possible, kill him again. The next day, Puka comes up with a business idea and presents it to his living friends. Before getting to the elephant in the room, the dummy shows his buddies the other tricks he can do with his necromancer's skills. To prove his point, he possesses Misaki's pen and makes it write some weird stuff on the paper in front of them. If this works, Puka plans to open a magic shop to sell possessed items to customers. Takumi, who seems to be the only person with a functioning brain there, calls out his stupid idea and tells him to think of another way to make money. Then the possessed pen has a brilliant idea and and encourages Puka to open a fortune-telling business. A week later, Puka manages to rake in 100,000 yen just by telling delusional people what they should eat to find the love of their lives. What a genius. While they're counting the week's earnings, the pen has another brilliant idea to expand the scam and make it worldwide. They'd use Puka's powers to communicate with dead relatives of whoever's getting their fortune read and manipulate the spirit to either troll the greedy bastards or help them. Takumi stops right there to remind the pen that Puka is a man of peace, so taking the scams and violence too far might affect his mission in their world. The necromancer pauses for a moment and decides to split the profits with everyone, including Puka, who did jack, trying to earn the money. The argument continues. Takumi reveals to the necromancer the secret life of the original Puka as a rich, spoiled brat. But before he can finish his sentence, the original Puka's nephew and niece, Kazuki and Shizuki, show up to greet their long-lost uncle. The fake Puka freezes and does his best to push those annoying brats out of the way. He even reveals his nickname from the other world, thinking it would scare them off. But unfortunately, Kazuki's brain was already pretty developed. So she gets straight to the point and insists her uncle read her fortune. Instead of giving in to the spoiled brat, Puka just tells her to come back the next day. This pisses Kazuki off so much that she calls everyone in the room peasants and warns them not to mess with her. Takumi, who already had plenty of experience with these clueless rich kids, confronts her without sugarcoating it and almost makes her reveal her own name. Fortunately, her goons and bodyguards manage to stop her from giving away too much info. After all, you never know what Takumi might be up to behind the scenes, right? Kazuki tries to dodge the issue, but Puka stands up and totally shuts her down before pulling both kids into a tight hug. While he's at it, he sees a ghost begging him to take care of the children, and he promises to handle everything before sending them off. After that kind of weird encounter with the kids, Puka discusses what happened with Takumi, describing the ghost he just saw as a protector but with a certain touch of craziness. Takumi asks if he can fully trust the ghost, and Puka simply replies that in the end, it doesn't matter. Moving on, Takumi hands Puka a folder packed with info about the Shinoyama group and advises him to learn everything he can about the family before visiting them the next day. In the file, the necromancer discovers that the real Puka is actually the son of Rozan, the current patriarch of the group, and on top of that, he's entitled to a huge pile of money if something happens to the old man. That's when everyone realized why someone wanted him dead at all costs. Since they still haven't figured out who ordered the hit, Puka is going to have to be super cautious during the visit. Before the day ends though, Takumi and Puka choose Misaki to be their personal bodyguard the next day. That night, the twins finally meet their terrible uncle, Takeru, who also happens to be Lemming's boss. Takeru gives them an earful for being out late and then immediately asks about their uncle. They tell him everything they know, and Takeru gets super eager to see Puka the next day. He also wants them to keep an eye out and be very careful, because nobody knows what might go down when Puka shows up at their house tomorrow. Late that night, Rosen himself gets the news of Puka's return home and gets super excited to see his son again. The next day, Puka leaves the base early and arrives at the imposing Shinoyama family mansion right on time. As soon as he gets there, he runs into the two brats from the day before, Kuki and Shizuki, who welcome him with a warm welcome home. At that moment, Puka could see an aura of a spirit begging someone to help the kids, but he chose to mind his own business and stay quiet. Right after that, Takeru, who is also Puka's nephew and the president of Shinoyama Security, shows up to give the official welcome home. Before letting him in, Takeru asks Puka about his journey of self-discovery, and Puka replies that for now, he's gotten what he needed. Continuing on, he asks about Misaki, the young woman hanging around nearby, and Misaki introduces herself with such flawless class that even the necromancer inside Puka is left with his jaw dropped. After these kind of weird introductions, Takeru and the kids take Puka and Misaki to the mansion's dining room where they can chat and, of course, have a good breakfast. To start, Takeru asks Misaki about her family's business, but Misaki replies that the company is already 6 feet under since her parents died before she could take control. Takeru pays his respects and apologizes, while Puka mentally reviews his meeting with Takumi from the night before. Apparently, Takumi wanted Puka to understand the kind of bizarre family dynamics of that powerful clan, and also how shady and suspicious their security company might be. He warned Puka about the family's head of security, Takeru, and told him to never ever underestimate him. Puka snaps out of his daydream, or flashback, when Kiri, Takeru's wife, shows up to give Misaki some moral support. Takeru promptly corrects his wife and advises her not to cause more problems than solutions for Misaki's family. Misaki behaves impeccably, leaving Puka in a tight spot. While he's struggling to keep his composure, Kuki suddenly appears behind him and asks Puka Puka to tell her about that weird stuffed animal on his back. Well, that's when the only unemployed and kinda dumb girl of the house, 𝐂, shows up and explains the plushie in detail. Turns out 𝐂 is a crazy shark fanatic, so at least there's an explanation for her being that way. While she rambles on endlessly about sharks, another random and completely unimportant relative speaks up and welcomes Puka back home. Right after that, Puka asks about the others, and the twins tell him that most of them are traveling abroad. While they continue introducing each family member, the big boss, Rosen himself, shows up and calls his son aside for a private chat. Before Puka can even move, that random relative from earlier tries to start a conversation, but Rosen shuts him up immediately and directs all his attention to his prodigal son. After that random relative is dismissed, Puka approaches his supposed father and calmly apologizes for leaving home. Rosen acts completely natural and invites his son to his quarters for a very private conversation, just the two of them. Soon after breakfast, the twins are seen walking down the hallway, visibly disappointed with how calm Rosen was when dealing with Puka. What they didn't even imagine was that the ghost was right behind them, desperately begging someone to save him from the imminent fire. Meanwhile, Rosen entertains his son in his private quarters. As soon as they get past all the small talk, he gets serious and demands that the imposter in front of him reveal himself once and for all. At first, Puka tried to play the dad for a fool, but Rosen quickly told him to cut the crap and get serious with him. By that point, Puka already had a katana pointed at his throat. With no other options, he reveals himself, visibly impressed by the connection a father in this world has with his son. Rosen continues the conversation by asking Puka if the real Puka is still alive, but before he can even answer, the necromancer smells a strong smoke in the air. He jumps up and begs Rosen to let him go so he can save the twins from certain death. Rosen sees the urgency and desperation in his son's eyes, so he allows Puka to leave, and the kid doesn't think twice before jumping out the window. Soon after he bails, Rosen talks to the assassin hiding in the ceiling of his room, and a few seconds later, a huge explosion happens somewhere in the mansion. In the next scene, a flashback is shown to explain what really happened the night Kazuki and Shizuki's babysitter Suzuka died. That day, the brats had been exploring the forest, but then Shizuki dropped her bag out in the woods, and Suzuka ran to get it. When she got there, she came face to face with that random kind of crazy relative from earlier arguing with a certain fire-spitting bug, and she accidentally made a noise. Finding out they were being watched, that fat bastard interrupts his meeting with the criminal and runs after Suzuka, who's desperately running back to the mansion to warn the others. Unfortunately, the fire-spitting bug catches up to her and incinerates her body, turning it to ashes. The fat bastard tries to cover up the incident as a mere explosion, and even Suzuka herself didn't realize she was already dead until it was too late. Right after that explosion, someone shows up to take the twins to a safe place, and the poor kids blindly follow the guy without even bothering to check his identity. At the city's detention center, Iwa and Arasi are seen walking toward the interrogation room to consult a psychopath in their custody, the famous Phantom Solitaire, whose real name is Soramura, or Sorry to his friends. In the meeting, Iwa takes the opportunity to lay into the criminal before pulling up a video of the skeletons in the burning building. He then demands that the criminal explain what the hell was going on there, since absolutely nothing about that fire was normal. Having seen the message that the fire-spitting bug usually leaves on the walls of its crime scenes, Iwa explains his theory to that idiot. Meanwhile, Kazuki and Shizuki soon realize that something is very wrong with the person taking them to a safe place, especially when they start entering places they've never ever been before. Unfortunately for them, the man doesn't give them any chance to save themselves, as he reveals his true face and already prepares his palate for a delicacy. Right when he's about to finish off the kids, Misaki shows up out of nowhere and kicks him so hard she breaks his face. After that, she assures the spirit that she's there, firm and strong, to protect the kids. Seconds later, the criminal removes his mask, or rather his fake face, and recognizes Misaki as one of Lisa's assassins. Misaki makes sure the kids are far away from that room before turning around to talk some nonsense with a guy who has a crazy look on his face. After exchanging pointless insults, the criminal attacks Misaki using fire and electricity. Misaki dodges everything she can and only fights back when strictly necessary. Over the next few minutes, Misaki wields her favorite assassination weapon, the iron bar, and engages the criminal in combat. As time goes on, the fire spreads throughout the basement and the kids end up trapped. With nowhere left to go, they hold hands and promise to apologize to Suzuka when all this is over. At the last second, Puka shows up out of nowhere and saves the kids from a terrible fate. After some straight talk and motivation, Puka lets the kids leave, throwing the cleanup responsibility to Takeru, who already calls his trusted assassins to take care of the attacker. Miles away, that fat bastard from earlier is captured by Takeru's special forces and, of course, ends up in prison. After managing to get out of the basement, the fire-spitting bug tries to escape by putting on a new face. This time, however, Puka shows up and exposes his true identity to the guy. Shortly after, Misaki arrives and delivers such a kick that it breaks him again. Even after getting kicked in the balls almost twice, the guy still gets up, ready to cause more trouble. Puka gives him a chance to confess everything and try to redeem himself. But like a completely crazy criminal, the fire spitter keeps spewing flames from his claws. Puka continues acting cautiously to avoid exposing his true power to the Shinoyamas, and this bastard of course mistakes that for weakness. Fortunately, Li-Ming shows up at the perfect moment to knock him out for good and take him into custody. After his capture, that fat relative faces Takeru's wrath and his assassins, who make sure to torture him until his soul leaves his body for daring to go against the Shinoyama family. Back at the station, the Phantom Solitaire calls Aiwa out and warns him that the so-called fire spitter is nothing but a cheap farce with tricks and props to simulate magic. Iwa stays silent for a while, carefully thinking about his next move. While the fake fire-spitting criminal is being transported to the detention facility, the real fire-spitting bug makes his triumphant appearance and burns the poor guy from the inside. Fortunately, no officers got hurt, as the real fire-spitting bug just kept moving, crossing the bridge. Right after the fire, Misaki and the generic Puka meet with his dad in his room to continue that discussion. Before he can even open his mouth to say anything else, Puka asks Rozan for some privacy. Impressed with his detection skills, Rozan promptly empties the room. After that, they continue the conversation, and Puka finally tells him the whole truth about his identity and where he really came from. At the same time, Takeru is seen in a very dark place, thanking Li-Ming's for saving the twins. But then Li-Ming informs him that Puka got there before him. While he details the situation, Rozan finally starts to understand some of the weird things he'd been noticing since Puka arrived. Continuing on, he draws his sword, points the blade at Misaki's throat, and demands that she confirm whether she really killed his son. When Misaki boldly answers yes, Rozan is completely shocked by the girl's confidence. He hesitates for a few seconds before the shark fleshy Borg jumps out of Puka's neck to protect Misaki, exactly as the real Puka would have done if he were there. That attitude convinces Rozan, so he asks the plushie if it really is the real Puka. After receiving some nods, the old man just laughs and moves on, talking about how absurd this whole idea was. Eventually, he calms down and presents the generic Puka with some of his robots that he can possess. Taking a look at the robots, the real Puka steps forward and claims one for himself, which kinda catches everyone off guard. In the end, Rozan allows his son's soul to remain with them in the safe house. As for Misaki, he forgives her for saving the twins from the fire earlier. Puka thanks his father for his help and leaves. About 30 minutes after the meeting, Rozan sits there ruminating on the outcome of that encounter. He realizes that Misaki is one of Lisa's agents, so the best thing to do is leave her alone. Besides, if someone in the family is plotting against Puka, then it's up to him to find out. Moments before leaving the mansion, Puka calls Takumi and fills him in on everything that happened during the day. Takumi chews him out for telling Rozan the naked truth, but Puka doesn't seem the least bit worried about it. After the call, Misaki holds the plushie and genuinely apologizes for trying to kill him right off the bat. But the necromancer's surprised. The plushie is totally cool with Misaki, as long as she gives him some time with her 2 oranges on her chest. Right then, the twins show up to thank Misaki for saving their lives earlier. As for why they acted so coldly with her, the kids explain that they were just really scared and didn't want to seem weak at all. Misaki accepts their apology and encourages them to be stronger next time. And the kids turn to Puka and thank him too for not giving up on them. Puka also apologizes and advises them to keep on living because that's what will make their guardian spirit happy. Said and done, Puka and Misaki head home. A few hours later, Iwa and Arasi find out about the fire incident with the police car and inadvertently end up talking about the real fire-spitting bug right in front of Sori. After hearing everything he wanted and more, Sori asks Iwa to show him the skeleton video because now he's more interested in them than ever. Iwa tries to make him trade information for it, but Sori gets pissed off and escapes the facility right after turning off all the lights. Before Iwa and Arasi could even realize it, Sori was already miles away. Moments later, Iwa and his partner hold an emergency meeting with the rest of the task force to discuss the unbelievable escape of the Phantom Solitaire. After putting all the details on the table, one of them asks Iwa to explain how the hell he managed to escape right under everyone's noses. Iwa looks visibly embarrassed and quickly changes the subject, starting to talk about the delinquent crimes this giant baby had committed in the past. Although they couldn't link him to any murders, Sori, aka Phantom Solitaire, had always been a real thorn in the nation's side. His most famous crime to date was when he kidnapped the Prime Minister in broad daylight, along with all the important people from the opposing political party. All of that just to turn the entire scene into a manga. After raking in a huge pile of cash with that marketing stunt, the Japanese security system became a literal laughingstock worldwide. One fine day, the criminal who'd been embarrassing everyone simply turned himself in. When asked why, he replied that it was because he wasn't able to attract the real magicians and witches with his stunts. At that point, everyone's jaw dropped at how childish and clueless this scumbag was. After seeing the lunatic ramble about some nonsense, they locked him up behind bars once and for all. Well, not for long because he's now out and about. Next, Puka buys a radio for about 2,000 yen and brings it home so everyone can listen. Tuning in, they hear some breaking news about the arsonist who was literally fried to death. While Takumi scrambles to find any valid info online, another reporter takes over the broadcast to warn all of Japan that Sorimura, the Phantom Solitaire has escaped prison. At the same time, Iwa and Arasi see the broadcast on TV and are shocked at how Sori managed to appear on screen right away. Back at the safe house, Takumi explains the true nature of the Phantom Solitaire to his partners. He describes the childish adult as an urban legend that somehow managed to get hugely popular with the media. Around that time, the news reporter reveals himself to be the real Phantom Solitaire from the start and warns Japan to prepare for his next stunts in a week. With that, he ends the broadcast and things return to normal. Iwa and Arasi desperately try to figure out how Sori managed to hijack all the TV stations at once. Iwa then elaborates a theory and states that the info broker must have given him a hand. Turns out the info broker is a real jack of all trades in the criminal world, an information broker who has answers to almost every logical question you can imagine. Now the real pickle they have to deal with is Sori, who is just like Lisa and manages to attract troublemakers from all corners. To deal with someone like him, they'll have to be extremely careful. That night, Sori finally manages to find the real fire-spitting bug on top of a rooftop. The real bug, who, by the way, covers his face with an umbrella, talks to the kinda crazy solitaire over a phone call. At first, Sori couldn't understand why the bug would need to call him when they were just a few meters apart. Well, the crazy fire spitter says he's just being cautious. He then asks Sori some questions to try to figure out what kind of person he is, and Sori informs him through some pretty peculiar demonstrations that he's someone who loves to waste things because he believes that's exactly what makes life worth living. In the next scene, Puka and his partners discuss Sori and his huge popularity in all of Japan's media. Takumi asks if there was anyone like that in his old world, and Puka says yes. They had Piero Viso, the venomous dragon of destruction, who was actually taken down by Shigurua himself. Takumi gets pretty interested in the subject and encourages Puka to keep rambling about the creatures from his world. Over time, they soon realize that his old world and theirs might not be so different after all. Back on the rooftop, Sori continues dodging all of the fire-spitting bug's attacks, making sure to let the criminal know that he's super well known for being a wasteful person, and he enjoys the hell out of it. Once the fire-spitting bug decides he's heard enough, he lets Sori listen to his life philosophies. With his life hanging by a thread, the Phantom Solitaire apologizes for being a total jerk before revealing the trick behind his illusion. He appears on the bug's umbrella and expresses how disappointed he is to find out that the bug isn't a magical being after all. In response, the bug tells him he's not the least bit interested in fairy tales. Sori continues talking about the new presence in Shinjuku that's causing all these supernatural things and asks the bug if he has any plans to deal with the situation. The fire-spitting bug says yes and invites him to join his cult group. Then Puka and his partners keep talking about dragons and everything about them when suddenly they hear a knock on the door. Answering it, they come face to face with Soya Shinoyama, the unemployed shark lady, and yet another kid. Surprised, they ask that unemployed lady what the hell she's doing at their safe house, but the woman doesn't offer any explanation. Instead, she just throws herself into the room with her spoiled rich girl pose and plops her shark-themed sleeping bag on the floor like it's the most normal thing in the world. When it's time to explain what she's doing there, she decides she'll introduce herself first and only then give explanations. To start, she introduces herself as Sayo and calls her assistant Lei, who also happens to be a butler in training. In response, Takumi introduces himself and the other two to that somewhat unbalanced brat. After that, Puka asks Sao to explain why she's there to stay with them, and Sao replies that it's because all her shark accessories and toys were burned in the fire. Instead of sympathizing with her, Misaki makes a joke, or rather mocks her, before Lei steps forward to show them a message from Rozan himself. In a video, Rozan explains the current situation at the mansion and earnestly asks Puka to take care of Sao and Lei. Before ending the message, he warns Puka that he's now keeping an eye on that building, but there's absolutely nothing for him to worry about. It's all for his protection. Puka uses his demonic magic and feels the presence of a few more people nearby. Knowing all this, he stays calm but keeps thinking about the possibility that Iwa might be the person actually after his life. The next morning, Puka wakes up and finds Sao pouting, wanting to sleep a little more. After having a pretty boring conversation with her, Puka finds out just how lazy and frankly stupid this rich girl is. Eventually, she goes back to sleep and her supposed butler has to apologize on her behalf. Poor guy Takumi, who has zero patience for lazy people, decides to take care of it and cleans up one of the rooms they're not using, turning it into a room for the two. Sao still gets up to grumble a bit more before finally going back to sleep. Lei, on the other hand, tries to tell the group that they don't need special treatment. That said, he goes to make breakfast for everyone. Puka asks why he was chosen to be Sao's assistant, and Lei, without hesitating, makes up a flimsy excuse, a total lie. Then Puka asks him to tell him the current state of the mansion. Lei warns that the mansion is infested with cops, more than ants on a candy, so he should stay away from the property until the dust settles for good. In the next scene, Iwa and Arasi visit the mansion to investigate the previous stays fired. After the necessary introductions, they finally meet with Takaru, who gives the police an earful, pointing out mercilessly how incompetent they are at keeping these criminals in line. But first, he points out how dangerous the fire-spitting bug and the phantom solitaire are to the Shinoyama family, and asks the cops why they still haven't caught them, even after receiving a mountain of public money from the government over all these years. Hearing that, Iwa and Arasi sit there wondering what got into Takeru to make him so pissed off. After the meeting, however, the duo leaves and discusses the assassins who were standing guard protecting Takeru during the meeting. As soon as they figure out their modus operandi, the two guys already plan to pick a fight with the Shinoyama family if things go right, of course. Arasi, with his head in the clouds, asks his partner to explain things more deeply, and Iwa informs him about Puka and his involvement in the recent crimes happening around the city. For him, there's no doubt, Iwa believes Puka is the center of all these crimes, and he's willing to do anything to expose Puka once and for all. While the duo leaves the property, Takaru is already figuring out a way to deal with the annoying Iwa. His assassins suggest they make the guy disappear, but Takaru says to wait and watch the investigation because he believes Iwa will end up exposing Puka's secrets. And besides, they still have to worry about Rosan doing everything to protect his golden boy. So this situation with Iwa can wait a bit. Around this time, Puka buys provisions for Sao and her butler. Before the day ends, they make sure to fix up the other room nice and tidy for their new visitors and put them to sleep as night falls. Hours later, around midnight, Lei jumps out of bed and listens carefully, eavesdropping on the conversation in Puka and Takumi's room. After that, he gets up and sneaks to Puka's door, cursing and calling him an imposter for fooling Roseanne and making him fall in love with him. Since he still doesn't know the truth, Lei thinks this fake Puka is an imposter with some pretty dark intentions. Unfortunately, he was wrong, but he still had no idea. After a quick memory of his last meeting with Rosen, Lei gets ready to take down this parasite sucking on the Shinoyama family. If things go as he wants, then he'll be able to deal with the real Puka, since he never once respected a wimp like Rosan's second son. For context, Lei's origin story is explained and started about 10 years ago. Back then, Lei lost 4 of his limbs after failing his first job as an assassin, and he was about to be used as a mere tool to cultivate poisonous fungi that his assassin clan uses on their missions, like a gardener of evil. Fortunately, before his scumbag father could do that to him, Rosen showed up and bought the disabled kid like a real-life Batman, only darker. You'd think Rosen was being generous, but actually he only bought the kid to use him as a lab rat in his latest prosthetic experiment. For a while, Rosen kept the kid and helped him continue training until he was strong enough to become a bodyguard. Now that he's achieved that position, our friend didn't want anything to ruin that achievement. In the next scene, Lisa is seen explaining the Shinoyama family connections to her 2 little friends, her little playthings. Together, the trio throws ideas around about possible suspects involved in Puka's murder earlier, but they soon get nowhere. According to their theory, there's a good chance the suspect is from the family itself, and it makes perfect sense for them to hire assassins from a mercenary organization to put an end to the poor kid. From there, they start discussing the assassin family Lei comes from, also noting their connections to the Shinoyama family. Around this time, Lei, who's still at Puka's door, stays quiet and listens carefully to every word of their conversation inside. He hears Puka talking about a dragon from his homeland named Maloof, and how she married a god or something. Lei gets annoyed with the chatter and throws a fit. However, he stops immediately when he starts hearing strange sounds coming from inside the room. Moments later, Puka, who's already figured out the kid is spying behind the door, intentionally speaks loud enough for him to know he's aware of his presence. Lei gets the message right away and calls off his snooping for now. The next morning, Iwa holds another meeting to discuss Misaki and Puka. This time, they focus their attention on Puka and all the weird stuff he's been pulling lately. Arasi, of course, makes his contributions to give the case a boost. And over time, Iwa reveals the location of Puka's new fortune-telling shop. Elsewhere in the city, Sari is spotted by his fans during a stop at a convenience store. He poses for some photos, but soon gets noticed by the cops and becomes the target of a massive chase around town. At the same time, Puka and Misaki get ready to open their fortune-telling shop for the day. But just as they're about to start, Iwa and Arasi show up out of nowhere to get a peek at the future from this so-called Puka, the fortune teller. Their arrival sends chills down everyone's spine in the room, especially Takumi, and Iwa notices that right away. He tells everyone to chill out and relax since it's their lunch break. By law, they can't arrest anyone during off hours, so everything's cool. That said, Iwa asks Arasi if he wants to check out his destiny too. Arasi says no, and they all move to the next room to check out Iwa's fortune. Once everyone sits down, Iwa whines and makes fun of the kid before asking him to help fix his life. After hearing all the nonsense the guy had to say, Puka activates his magic, changing the color of his eyes. Over time, he infuses his mana into the orb in front of him and makes it clear that he can't actually see the future. Like, isn't that obvious? All he can do is trace paths and read them to get an idea of what's coming. Lei, seeing the tricks Puka was using to fool everyone, realizes that the kid must have had a good amount of hardship and confusion in the past, like a master of getting by. Even so, the kid watches the two empty-headed guys who came to have their fortunes checked and realizes they might be cops. He makes a mental note of their faces in case he needs to spill the beans later. And then Puka continues using his magic to read 𝐂𝐴's secret job as a member of the Community Safety Division, like a paranormal detective. 𝐂𝐴 is shocked to see that Puka did his homework right, but he doesn't think it's magic at all. Instead, he figures the kid must be using a hidden electronic dot under his hood to communicate directly with Takumi and get the info. At the same time, Takumi tears up the internet looking for more info on 𝐂𝐴 because he never knew the guy worked for the community. While this progresses, Puka exposes 𝐂𝐴's matchmaking business right before talking about a certain emotional wound he carries from the past, like an old trauma. At this point, 𝐂𝐴 gets serious because he suspects something very wrong is going on there. To try to keep the atmosphere light, 𝐂𝐴 pokes at Puka, telling him to explain how he can heal from that emotional wound since he's so smart. Things, however, get serious when the magic-infused spirit pen emerges from the beyond and scribbles some stuff on the paper, carefully watching as if expecting something extraordinary to happen. Lei notices the same sound he heard from the room the night before and wonders if Puka was already practicing the magic trick back then. Just then, 𝐂𝐴's hair stands on end after seeing the pen write a symbol he had never revealed to a single living soul. Turns out one of his old friends had told him about this symbol. Before burning it, he had warned 𝐂𝐴 to never ever talk about that symbol with anyone else because it could cause a huge problem for the whole city. So how the hell did that weird pen know the symbol? By this point, 𝐂𝐴 was already asking Puka some seriously scary questions. Puka in turn remains calm and answers every question without flinching. In the end, 𝐂𝐴 lets him go, pays him, and leaves the shop with his partner. Before letting him leave, however, Puka tells him his real nickname, the Corpse God, and asks him with all seriousness to never ever forget that name. 𝐂𝐴 makes a mental note and leaves the room, leaving Lei wondering what the pen wrote on that paper to make 𝐂𝐴 go that crazy. He realizes that whatever it is, it must be tied to Puka's secrets, and he's going to unravel that mystery sooner or later. With that, he offers to buy dinner for the team, and only 𝐂𝐴 allows him to leave the place as long as he buys some shark souvenirs on the way back. Lei notes the request and leaves. In the next scene, Arasi and 𝐂𝐴 stop at a restaurant to eat some spicy seafood rice and curry before heading back to the station. At first, there's an awkward silence at the table, but then 𝐂𝐴 can't take it anymore and tells his partner to spit it out. Arasi then asks him to open up about what really happened in the fortune-telling room. In response, 𝐂𝐴 asks for some time to get his thoughts in order so he can tell him everything on the walk back to work. Hearing that, Arasi stays calm and is glad that 𝐂𝐴 is getting back to his normal state, no freakouts. After lunch, they head out to continue their walk back to work. What they didn't know was that Lei was lurking in the shadows silently, gathering more info about Puka and about them. Elsewhere in the city, two Yakuza guys try to access a safe containing something precious for their criminal organization. Back then, the fire-spitting bug was torching their warehouse, but they had something they needed to protect at all costs. As soon as they retrieve a piece of paper, the fire-spitting bug catches up to them and burns them to ashes, like turns them into literal BBQ. Right after, he leaves his usual message on the walls and bails, leaving Sorry the Phantom Solitaire to pick up the strange piece. Oso recovers the weird item and discovers the symbol that made 𝐂𝐴 freak out earlier. With that, he gets the theme for his next public performance and gets straight to the point. Hours later, after Takumi and the others close up shop, the trio gets together to discuss why 𝐂𝐴 bolted earlier, like disappeared without a word. While Puka explains what happened, 𝐂𝐴 is already at Lisa's bar trying to get some info out of her. Turns out they have a mutual friend who used to expose dirty cops, the worthless kind, and he mysteriously disappeared 5 years ago. 𝐂𝐴 believes Lisa is behind the man's disappearance to this day. Not only that, but he knows she has a connection to Puka, and that alone is pretty suspicious. Lisa, who has already figured out 𝐂𝐴's tricks, plays dumb and asks 𝐂𝐴 to explain things more deeply. 𝐂𝐴 just gets more irritated and annoyed while trying to explain the connection between Lisa and his common friend, Rosorogi. At the same time, Puka confesses to knowing about the guy, and even admits to his friends that the soul he trapped in the pen has a pretty similar name. Whether it's the same person or not, he has no idea. Hearing that name, Lisa gets nostalgic and asks 𝐂𝐴 why he seems happy and angry at the same time. 𝐂𝐴 says it's because he's been stuck playing the clown, acting the fool for so long. Even so, he's still pissed at Puka for being friends with the shady side of the city. He feels that Rosorogi recruited him to join the Community Safety Division for kids. He feels bad for Puka and angry at Rosorogi for dragging innocent people into the dirty, dangerous side of their lives. Hearing that, Lisa informs him that she only rents a property to Puka, and that's it, period. She's not involved in whatever he does, but she's not going to pass up the chance to get close to him. Having heard all that, 𝐂𝐴 warns Lisa to be very careful with her business. But then Lisa asks why he's so sure that Rosorogi is alive. In response, 𝐂𝐨 says he has too much info on him for him to be dead, like completely gone. That said, he gets up and leaves the bar after promising to uproot those scumbags on the police force who are forcing Rosorogi into hiding. Lei, overhearing the conversation, gets a new lead to investigate the relationship between Rosorogi and Lisa. Back at the safe house, Takumi panics when he finds out that Ozorogi used to investigate police corruption and other shady stuff. Well, it turns out that the soul trapped in the pen is actually Rosorogi himself, and he knew 𝐂𝐨 and Arasi. When asked to provide what he drew on that piece of paper, the pen demanded 1 million yen, like a fortune. Of course, that's ridiculous, since a soul can't spend money, right? But then the pen tells Puka why it's demanding to be paid, because the case involves one of his deepest regrets. At this point, Puka has no choice but to give in to the pen's demands. Then Sori visits Grossa in his prison to get info on the symbol he recovered from the Yakuza hideout earlier. In the first few minutes, the duo chats about the info market, and the conversation gets serious when Sori provides the symbol and asks about its meaning, like what does it represent? Grosser takes a piece of paper and starts talking about the price. Of course, after a quick origin story about Grosser, Sori notes how powerful Grosser is at handling information that could ruin or build entire nations, like a true master of info. So far, the only thing Grosser can't trade in is people's minds, but he's almost there. After giving him a small gift, Sori makes a desperate attempt to make Grosser laugh. Unfortunately, his jokes are boring, like sleep-inducing. So Grosser only offers him 3 wafer sticks as payment for wasting his time. The shameless Sori takes the payment and scarfs down the wafers before asking Grosser to at least give him a crumb of info, like a tiny bit. Grosser stalls for a few seconds before finally revealing that one of the symbol's strokes is actually a sword. Hearing that, Sori asks how much he has to pay to get that valuable info. With Doomsday approaching fast, the whole city waits on edge, wanting to see what the bastard is planning to pull. Sao wakes up at noon and mumbles some nonsense before noticing the blimps floating outside. Seconds later, everyone, including Puka, sees the blimps outside. Puka immediately recognizes the symbol on the blimps, one he'd seen somewhere before and not recently. Misaki notices his worried face and asks why he's so stressed. Puka tells her it's because that symbol is the exact insignia of the fallen empire from his old world, like no kidding. Before doing anything, Puka takes a moment to remember his master's lessons about how the empire's insignia was created. After the flashback, he keeps wondering how Sori managed to get his hands on such a symbol, since he thought this world was different from his. Minutes after this move, info and conspiracy theories spread online, with people wondering what the insignia meant, or if it was meant to be seen by everyone. The only sure thing about this event is that there are people who don't like such info being leaked to the public, so the men behind the scenes act quickly to put an end to this guy. Then Arasi and 𝐂𝐨 talk about their next step. Now that Sori and other criminals are aware of this symbol, they're almost certain Sori might be connected to those people who caused Rosorogi's disappearance 5 years ago. So a symbol this important showing up now must mean that Sori and other criminals have it in their sights, like they're watching it. For now, they stick to their speculations and work to prove them. Seconds later, the head nurse, an older lady, runs into the office to warn 𝐂𝐨 that he's been summoned by the Metropolitan Police headquarters, like an urgent call. Meanwhile, Sori is having the time of his life, relaxing on one of his blimps while reading the paper and watching online videos. While doing that, he recalls the rest of his meeting with Grosser when he was charged about 3 trillion yen as payment to learn more about the symbol he brought to that picky guy. Earlier, Sori had argued against the outrageous price Grosser charged for just a silly symbol. However, once Grosser offers his explanation for doing it, Sori perfectly understands why he charged so much for it. Like, it made sense. Then the guy decides to figure out the meaning behind that symbol on his own. Even so, he plans to pay Grosser for his help after asking about the price of flying blimps around the city. Now back in the present, Sori keeps relaxing when suddenly a bullet from a kilometer away blows his brains out without mercy. The shooters who were chilling on top of a skyscraper soon realize they only shot a dummy because the real Sori is seen hiding somewhere else. And even though they're disappointed they failed their mission, they still keep their cool. Moments after the assassination attempt, the real Sori goes back on air and hijacks all the TV channels in the country. This time he points out how an organization was able to analyze police info in less than an hour and send snipers to a vantage point to shut him up, all over a stupid symbol. What a joke. If someone was ready to commit murder just because of a silly symbol, then there's a lot more behind it than anyone thinks. To uncover the true meaning behind the symbol, Sori offers a reward and promises to pay a huge sum to the person who can decipher it. After the live broadcast, Puka and Takumi talk about how to handle this mess. While they're at it, Sao shows up and demands to know the naked truth behind everything. At first, Puka tries to downplay her suspicion, but it's already too late because Sao isn't as dumb as they think, not at all. During the next hour or so, Puka tells her everything about him, including info about his old world. Hope hoping she'll just take it as a fairy tale. Surprisingly, 𝐂 believes the story simply because she knew the real 𝒏𝒄𝒊 like the back of her hand. To stop obsessing over the situation, 𝐂 goes to the shower to freshen up right after promising to keep her mouth shut. Shortly after she leaves, 𝒏𝒄𝒊 asks Takumi for permission to remove some of 𝐂's memories about him to keep his secret safe, like erase some parts. Takumi asks how he plans to do that, and 𝒏𝒄𝒊 explains how he uses his magic to erase specific parts of victims' memories, like some kind of mind control remote. Hearing all that, Takumi gets worried and asks 𝒏𝒄𝒊 if that's what he did to the goons in the human body at the start. When 𝒏𝒄𝒊 says yes, Takumi gets scared of him and asks about Misaki. Seconds later, they realize she's gone missing. Turns out Misaki followed 𝐂 to the shower to discuss something urgent, like a serious talk. With both of them naked and the 𝒏𝒄𝒊 plushie having a field day with their curves on the shower shelf, Misaki pulls out her secret weapon and asks 𝐂 if she knows that it was her who killed 𝒏𝒄𝒊 in the first place, like the original assassin. 𝐂 tries to deflect, but then Misaki pulls her closer and asks in a roundabout way to be punished for trying to kill an innocent kid. Well, 𝐂 sees right through her and calls her out for wanting to be punished even after the person she killed had already forgiven her. What a thing! At this point, Misaki freezes and looks on in admiration, while 𝐂, the supposed idiot, lays down the truth. Only truths in that shower, which was quite a scene. After showering together, Misaki asks 𝐂 if she's afraid of her. In response, 𝐂 informs her that she's not afraid because she knows Misaki is passionate about sharks. And that's a good sign. To her, anyone who can sit and talk about sharks for hours is a good person at heart, no matter what they've done in the past. Hearing that, Misaki is shocked, but then 𝐂 explains her own troubles. And let's just say 𝐂 has a few screws loose in her head, more than we initially thought, like she's kinda crazy. Anyway, after her little outburst, 𝐂 thanks Misaki for saving Kuki and Shizuki in the first place. When Misaki laughs her ass off, 𝐂 pulls her close, almost touching her chin to hers, and asks curiously for her to tell her everything about sharks. After getting themselves presentable, Miss and 𝐂 return to the living room to finally discuss their findings with Takumi and 𝒏𝒄𝒊. After hearing a bunch of nonsense from the duo, Takumi calls 𝐂 out and asks if she was the one who ordered the hit on the real 𝒏𝒄𝒊. Well, 𝐂 gets pissed and makes it very clear that she would never do such a thing, without, of course, first turning that relative into a nice shark snack. When she finds out about the real 𝒏𝒄𝒊's soul trapped in that cyborg shark plushie, 𝐂 goes into a depressed state, dying of concern over the super weird situation between the necromancer and 𝒏𝒄𝒊 himself. It doesn't take long before she begs the necromancer 𝒏𝒄𝒊 to find a way to sharkify her and allow the real 𝒏𝒄𝒊 to finally use her body. When 𝒏𝒄𝒊, of course, refuses to do that, they soon move on to much more urgent and important matters. To start the conversation, they urgently need to know what the next step is, since they believe a pretty shady organization is behind the use of that symbol, right? 𝒏𝒄𝒊 feels a huge need to punish them for desecrating the insignia, and worse, using it for such diabolical ends. Takumi fully agrees with what he said and starts planning the team's next move. But before anything else, they chat about sorry and try to guess his intentions in making that insignia public. Takumi then asks 𝒏𝒄𝒊 if by any chance someone from his old world might have come here to begin with. 𝒏𝒄𝒊 says there's no chance of him knowing since he was super busy in his old world, like creating his reincarnation spell, you know? Little by little, they start discussing 𝒏𝒄𝒊's connection with the skeletons he's used so far, right? And he says he freed some of them way before being labeled a bad person. Now that he needs some info from them, he feels really bad having to call them back since he's terribly ashamed to show who he's become over the years, you know? At this point, 𝐂 just tells the guy to shut up. What a boring conversation, and trusts that the ghost will definitely forgive him for his sins. Well, 𝒏𝒄𝒊 takes her advice somewhat reluctantly, and their conversation wanders for a few seconds. You know how it is. When they finally manage to get back to the main subject, Takumi decides he's going to thoroughly investigate the purpose of that symbol and find out once and for all why it matters so much. While he's on that mission, the possessed pen out of nowhere warns 𝒏𝒄𝒊 to tread carefully because the police force is way more sinister than he thinks, you know? Next, 𝒂𝒏 arrives at the Metropolitan Police HQ to have a meeting with the Superintendent General, the so-called Diro Taku. As soon as 𝒂𝒏 enters his office, Diro starts making comments about 𝒂𝒏's look and asks if 𝒂𝒏 really has the guts to take on the heavy work and solve this case once and for all. 𝒂𝒏, for his part, stays silent while Takumi and the crew try to figure out who the hell this Superintendent General is. Rosorogi then reveals a few more hairy secrets to them. This leaves each of them even more suspicious about what's going on. Meanwhile, back at the big boss's office, 𝒂𝒏 makes his presentation all serious, and Diro bombards him with really disturbing questions about this Rosorogi guy non-stop. 𝒂𝒏 reacts with such enviable calm that even Diro is left with his jaw dropped, who of course notes all of this. To wrap up the conversation, he warns 𝒂𝒏 to take care of himself and keep his head on straight because the coming months promise to be pretty tumultuous for him. After sorting out some other secondary info, Diro starts talking about their common enemy, Sari. Meanwhile, in another corner of the city, Sari himself appears in a park chatting about the hackers trying to break into the police department with someone he affectionately calls Baby. As soon as he gets the info he wanted, he realized the person in question is actually a fortune teller. Sari hangs up and decides he's going to visit that fortune teller to see if she'll read his fortune. The next day, the bastard shows up at Puka's fortune-telling shop and stands there listening to some random guy attesting to Puka's authenticity for two older ladies who just arrived for the first time. Like, super skeptical. After hearing that guy's speech, Sari gets all hopeful and waits patiently for his turn. In the meantime, Puka, while getting ready for another day of work, asks Takumi if he's found anything useful about that popular symbol floating around the city. In response, Takumi says unfortunately he still hasn't gotten anything useful. Hearing the two of them talk, the possessed Rosorogi pen suddenly speaks up and starts scribbling stuff on the paper in front of them, like frantically. According to its explanation, the real culprit behind all this crime syndicate behind the scenes is actually a real cop, believe it or not. He was investigating these people 5 years ago, but they got to him before he could actually catch them. Takumi and Puka, of course, take the pen's warning seriously and continue doing what they have to do. In another room, Lei is seen preparing a nice breakfast for Sao, while discreetly eavesdropping on Puka and Takumi's conversation. Like, without meaning to, he notices the pause in the conversation and the scribbles on the table, as if someone was using a mechanical pencil, you know? And he gets more and more suspicious about what these bastards are up to. Hearing the name Razorog for the second time, and in different places at that, it becomes more than clear to him that this person must be key to his investigation, for sure. Continuing the story, the pen tells him about his trusted friend on the force, Iwa, to whom he passed his secret message before being unfortunately killed. And even though the guy acts like he's got a few screws loose, he assures them that Yanome's heart, Arasai's partner, is in the right place. You can trust him? Back at the Metropolitan Police Department HQ, Iwa is holding another meeting with his colleagues to discuss the so-called Phantom Solitaire, who's the city's newest nuisance, like the headache of the moment, while he jots down some pretty cliche stuff about Nimrod and his symbol, as well as their next step, of course. Two officers are caught talking a bunch of crap about him, saying he's not fit to be a leader and blah blah blah. You know how it is. RC, who is listening to everything, keeps his mouth shut and just listens to his boss quietly. About an hour after opening his fortune-telling shop, Puka finally manages to meet the Phantom Solitaire, who's all disguised, of course. Even though he recognized right away that the old guy in front of him was Sari, Puka stayed cool and played the old fool's game like a master. After stringing him along, telling him stuff to fool him even more, Puka turns the tables on Sari, who was already all delusional and now gets even more disappointed. The fool. When things get tight, the old guy asks Puka if he can, by chance, provide any info about that symbol floating around town. Puka takes a look at the symbol, plays dumb, and then finally exposes a fatal flaw, but fatal in its design. He has Rosorogi's pen draw the original symbol on the paper in front of him and manages to leave Sari with a feeling of pure excitement, like at its peak. Discovering this twist, Sari gets so excited that he almost breaks character, the poor guy. The pen wants Puka not to overdo it, and not to reveal any more info for God's sake. And Puka, of course, quickly composes himself, keeping his cool. Right when Sari is about to bail, Puka calls him back and asks about a girl with pigtails sitting in a wheelchair, like out of nowhere. Hearing that, Sari freezes on the spot, like a statue, since he had never ever told anyone about that lady before. Not a single soul. Puka warns Sari that the girl's soul is already losing the ability to communicate, but he's absolutely sure she's not the least bit happy with the path he's decided to follow in life. Not one bit. Sari thanks him for the warning, kinda dazed, and leaves the room like in total shock. Outside, the guy gets super intrigued by Puka's secrets and gets even more interested in uncovering the person behind that mask and what they're really capable of. While he gets ready to get out of there, he notices two kinda weird ladies wandering around the place, like aimlessly. As they walk out into the rain to head home, not caring, he notices the raincoat one of them is wearing and thinks about how similar it is to the fire-spitting bugs. What a thing. If he's right, then the bug also showed up to get his fortune checked. What a character. Soon after that meeting with his colleagues, Iwa and Arasi meet to discuss the latest updates in the Phantom Solitaire chase, as well as the grotesque error in that current symbol that everyone knows and kind of loves, right? Arasi asks if they could really trust someone in the Force with such a big secret, but then Iwa warns him to be very, very careful with who he associates with, so they don't end up hiding just like Rosarodi did. Besides, catching the Solitaire will only help make those hiding in the shadows make a mistake and expose themselves, you know? So for now, they do their job and use the officers they have efficiently. While they toast to a new beginning, all excited, one of the two guys who were bad-mouthing Iwa hour earlier shows up just to annoy him and start an ego fight. 𝐂𝐨, however, sees their real intention, what they really want, and also gives them a good lesson to learn. Right near the end of that silly fight, the guy almost goes after 𝐂𝐨, like for real, which is terrible news for him, since Arasi stops him in the middle and squeezes his arm with such force that, my god, even after 𝐂𝐨 saved his skin, which is absurd, the idiot still doesn't shut up. Instead, he turns to Arasi and tries to make him feel guilty about a certain illegal secret operation he led in the past, like to humiliate him. Arasi makes it very clear to them that he was already severely punished for his mistake and has paid the price. But before the guy can even open his mouth to say anything else, two other high-ranking officers, Yatsu and D'Angelo, show up out of nowhere to put an end to any agitation growing there. To start right off, Dang subtly dislocates the idiot's arm and, like magic, helps pop it back into place. What skill! Then, with a friendly smile on his face, he greets 𝐂𝐨 and Arasi in his own way, of course. Right after that, Senior Commissioner Habak shows up to take a look at everyone on that floor, and Donja, smart as he is, quickly distracts him, getting him off their trail. After getting those idiots out of the room, the Senior Commissioner finally asks for a detailed explanation. 𝐂𝐨 takes him to an empty, separate room and explains everything bit by bit. Hearing that, the Commissioner tells him not to stress over those empty-headed guys, since they were just trying to vent a little. You know, the pressure. 𝐂𝐨 thanks the man for always defending him, even when he thinks he doesn't deserve it, and leaves right after promising to make the police force proud of him. You can bet on it. As soon as he leaves, 𝐈 joins his other colleagues in the hallway to get straight back to work without wasting time. When night falls, suddenly, while reading an important update from his investigation, Lei notices some strange movement on their roof and runs to check it out, like at the speed of light. When he gets there, he finds the guy himself, Sorry, rambling like a lunatic. While he declares his intentions to check out Puka personally, Lei hides behind a corner and shoots a kunai at Sorry without mercy, thinking it was Puka himself who attacked him. The poor guy, the kinda crazy man, speaks loudly and urges him to show himself once and for all. Lei appears from the corner and tells the old guy his name. Sorry gets super disappointed to see such a small kid, completely unimportant to his life. Like, what a letdown. But he accepts what he's got for today, right? While the chaos unfolds on the roof, the fake Puka is seen sleeping peacefully next to his shark plushie. The real Puka, poor thing, wakes up suddenly after noticing something really strange in the room and looks up to see those familiar flaming writings on the wall. What a thing, signaling that the fire-spitting bug is around, like in the area. Meanwhile, the fake Puka is sleeping like a rock, dreaming about one of those nostalgic memories from his old world. That day, he was chilling in the library with his master when suddenly he heard some loud screams in the other room. What a shock. Confused, the necromancer of that time tried to investigate what was wrong, but his master just calmed him down and urged him to prepare for the Empire's imminent fall, like, get ready. At the very end of his dream, she calls him a child until her last breath and warns him to cherish those he loves, because they might not be around long enough, unfortunately. Now that he's become like a declared enemy of the other world, Puka feels super sad for having disappointed his master's wishes. After drowning in a bunch of self-pity and nonsense, His Majesty appears in his dream, like, to comfort him, right? Well, at that moment, the shark plushie shakes him back to reality, and Puka soon notices the strange writing on the wall. He gets up quickly to investigate that burning smell in the room and realizes the writings are still hot, like freshly made. But before he can do anything, he receives a call from a completely unknown number. How strange. Answering, the voice on the other end asks if he's a bastard son of 𝑨𝒏𝒄𝒊𝒆. What audacity. Well, that's something Puka had only heard back in his old world, so he gets super worried that someone would know that specific term. What a thing. Up on the roof, Sorry keeps trying at all costs to get a reaction out of Lei, but still nothing happens. Utter frustration. Lei soon gets tired of all that rambling, what a drag, and advances, determined to incapacitate him and capture him once and for all. At first, Sorry underestimates him, thinking he's just a kid, but after his first attack, Sorry soon realizes this guy isn't as much of a kid as he thought. Not at all. Over the next few minutes, Sorry does his best to avoid getting caught in Lei's attacks, dodging everything. A few meters away, on top of another building, someone from Takeru's security group calls him to give a real-time update on the situation. After seeing the video evidence of what's going down live, Takeru sends lemmings to the scene to sort things out between Sorry and Lei, like to restore order. Meanwhile, down below, the tension only increases between Puka and the fire-spitting bug as Puka gets more and more worried about how much that strange man knows. What a fear. He asks the guy about his master, and the man says he doesn't know anything, like no idea. In the middle of that call, the fire-spitting bug discusses with his other self to try to discover Puka's true nature. What a mystery. Soon, he starts questioning Puka's own humanity, like, what are you? Asking him to reveal what he really is. For real, no messing around? Puka, on the other hand, uses his magic to feel the souls around the building and soon finds Lei and Sorry on the roof, like fighting for real. What chaos! After another strategic pause, Sorry tries every which way to get out of trouble with Lei, using his charm. Lei, on the other hand, remains a beast at how slow but unpredictable this buffoon is, how annoying. And besides, what the hell is he doing on the building at this hour? Is he there because of Puka? Or is there some hidden reason behind all this? Well, Lei was about to find out the truth, cost what it may. After Rosorogi's name is mentioned in passing, Lei notices Sari's excitement and finally manages to make some progress in the conversation. Sari, however, praises the little kid for being useful to him. What irony, he lets something slip and promises to repay Rosorogi later, for sure. That makes Lei super worried as he demands that Sari explain all of this better, like now. Sari soon realizes he's been made a fool of. How embarrassing. But he keeps his cool and lies through his teeth to keep his alternative story coherent. Lei sees right through all that nonsense and wonders if such a buffoon can really pose a real threat to the Shinoyama family. What a joke. After a few more sarcastic observations and jabbish, the duo keeps fighting non-stop. However, right when round 2 is about to start, for real, Lemmings shows up out of nowhere and instantly destroys the mood. Lei notices Lemmings' arrival and immediately gets worried about his presence there. Like, what does he want? He keeps his cool, even knowing the guy is bad news for sure, and asks Sari if he's by any chance in cahoots with that mysterious man. Sari keeps rambling non-stop to try to get out of trouble, but soon Lemmings decides he's had enough of this whole circus. So he turns to Sari and gets ready to take him away, by force if necessary. Lei sees the perfect chance and attacks him without thinking twice. While the fight rages on, Takeru's goons get a little worried about the kid attacking Lemmings. What courage. Takeru, however, uses the opportunity to tell them not to worry about Lei's safety at all, since he made it very clear to Lemmings to keep Lei out of the equation, like untouchable. At the moment, Lemmings is super obliged to obey his orders, so nothing, absolutely nothing is happening to Lei for now. Around the same time, Lemmings remembers his orders and walks determinedly towards Sori to capture him. He feels super insulted by being ignored. What an outrage. So he uses every weapon at his disposal to try to stop Lemmings, like with everything. Of course, Lemmings frees himself from Lei's attacks as if they were nothing, and keeps advancing towards Sori, who makes a desperate attempt to escape his clutches. While Sori keeps rambling for minutes on end. What a drag. Lei soon realizes that Sari might not be friends with Lemmings after all. What a twist. After hearing enough from Sari for one night, he decides he's going to put an end to both of them, just to maintain his own sanity. How crazy. Right when round 3 of that great battle is about to start, for real, Yados and Danja appear outside Puka's safe house out of nowhere and find one of the so-called fire-spitting bugs standing there just staring at the building. How strange. The duo calls him over for a serious chat and introduces themselves as police officers like, we're the law. Then, without beating around the bush, they ask what the hell she's doing on the street at 3 a.m. What kind of hour is that? And the lady, of course, keeps her cool unshaken. At that exact moment, the fire-spitting bug hangs up the phone on Puka, leaving him with his imagination running wild, wondering what the hell the fire-spitting bug could possibly know about him. What a mystery, after remembering some more bad memories from his old world. How sad. Puka the necromancer gets pissed and decides he's going to teach those who desecrate his empire a lesson they'll never ever forget. You can bet on it. He takes a little more time to calmly study the situation around his house, and once he's completely sure that everything's okay with everyone, he cuts himself and uses his own blood to create something he calls the overflow world of the underworld. What a name. Using a super secret technique taught to him by his master, of course in a flashback. The necromancer master is seen relaxing in the land where the fallen empire used to be. One of her friends, Romelka, shows up and annoys her to death with a bunch of small talk and stupid conversations. What a drag. Once she's had enough, she shuts the idiot up once and for all and continues expounding her life philosophy. All wise, she observes how long it takes for some to mature, pointing at her apprentice, the current fake Puka, in his weird, overly empathetic way with those he loves. While Romelka keeps insulting Puka's nature as still being like a kid, she corrects her and helps her realize that Puka isn't an immature kid at all. She only calls him a kid because he doesn't have a well-defined will of his own and lives for those he loves. That way, if one of his loved ones faces imminent danger, like life or death, then he loses all control and becomes much stronger than before. You can be sure. Her exact words come true that night as Puka envelops the entire building in his net without missing a thing. The girl outside noticed the drastic change in the atmosphere right away and chooses not to be part of whatever's about to happen. No way, but before leaving, she acts super normal and lies through her teeth to the cops, Yatsu and Donja, saying she's there looking for her lost dog with her dad. The lamest story ever. Right then, the other part of the fire-spitting bug, the man shows up and plays his role like a pro. When the cops ask her why she's wearing a raincoat out of nowhere, she says it's to avoid getting dirty, the most obvious excuse. Satisfied with the answer, the cops let them go without further questions. Puka, however, could see the dirty trick from afar. He knows the girl's true nature since he remembers her being there earlier to ask questions about the symbol. How clever. To keep his lab rats well under control, Puka the necromancer extends the range of his temple to cover a huge part of the city. Before doing anything else more important, he remembers the first time his master told him about this super dangerous technique, including the whole concept and how to use it correctly without error. According to her, if he sets it up right, then even those with evil eyes eyes would have a huge difficulty seeing through his disguise, like impossible. All they can notice is a slight change in the atmosphere, almost imperceptible. While Puka approaches the roof with millimeter precision, he makes his plans to avoid dealing directly with lemmings. Instead, he focuses on 𝐂𝐴 and the bastard Sorry. The shark plushie gets super worried and asks Puka how he plans to avoid any suspicion, you know. Then Puka borrows the arms of the souls he helped in that building and uses them to create an entire army of invisible arms that can. Still on the roof, Sorry notices the strange change in the atmosphere and decides it's better to get the hell out of there before it's too late. He tries to attack Lemmings with a light blow just to test, but Lemmings evades him like nothing. While he gets closer to capture Sorry, Puka's invisible arms reach him and restrain him for a few seconds, like, gotcha. Sorry notices the crazy thing happening in the air around the house and of course takes advantage of the situation. Puka, on the other hand, decides to take things a bit further. He increases the range of those invisible hands to stretch way up into the sky so they can catch that bastard Sorry, who's already flying high in the sky. Yachts and Don see the criminal from the ground, but they're so shocked and excited that they can't even report it, like paralyzed. While these strange things were happening, one of Takeru's men sent a video to his boss for urgent analysis. Of course, upon seeing the video, Takeru is shocked to see such a thing happening right in his city. What an outrage. Puka keeps maintaining his mana at max to ensure his trick keeps working without fail. As for Sorry, he soon realizes that the fire-spitting bug was using him as a cheap distraction just to talk to the real Puka. What a dirty move. For now though, he chooses to forgive him, since he's in such a good mood that he doesn't even care. While he watches Sorry float toward freedom, all happy, Puka strengthens his invisible arms and stretches them as far as he can outside the building to capture both Lemmings and Sorry at once. For minutes, he chases them both, but can't catch either in the end. After that lamentable waste of time and energy, Puka feels happy to have captured one of the fire-spitting bugs, the lady. Elsewhere in the city, one of the corrupt cops behind Rosorogi's death enters the group's forum and discusses the next steps with his colleagues. Noticing the hidden power that might be at stake from the night's events, the corrupt cops decide to secure that power for themselves. As for Iwa and Arasi, they hurry to isolate the scene as fast as possible and control the situation. Lisa is also informed of the cops' arrival and makes preparations to keep everything in order. Elsewhere, a man dressed as a butler enters a dark room to greet a certain lady who seems to be enjoying what's been happening in the city after surviving the night of terror. Takumi settles in to watch his favorite cosplay, a YouTuber pretend to be a puppet, and visit the streets of Shinjuku early in the morning to teach crows to talk. Nothing seems out of the ordinary in the first half of the broadcast, when the invisible hands suddenly emerge from Takumi's building heading toward the live stream. Takumi gets curious and nearly spills his drink when he realizes what's happening. The next morning, Iwa, Arasi, and some station officers gather at Lisa's building to investigate the previous night's incident with the solitaire. Upon arriving, they find a crowd of people around the building waiting for some miracle. Initially, they try to seal off the area, but soon realize they need a warrant. Meanwhile, Lisa receives two brother assassins from another intermediary organization led by Mr. Darren, someone she feels she can trust. Upon finding out they're from him, she welcomes them into her humble home, then warns them to follow her rules and not disrespect them. One of the sisters, Ryan, gets the idea to act spoiled, but Lisa teaches her a lesson she'll never forget. After putting the brat in her place, she gets back to business and warns them to stay alert because she knows things are about to get more serious. Then Takumi searches for videos and articles about the invisible hands online and shows them to Puka so they can discuss. Puka stumbles over his words most of the time until Takumi talks about avoiding more attention. Sao appears and Takumi asks Puka if he thinks others thought the hands were real. Puka knows Lemmings and Solitaire believed in the hands, but as for Iwa, he's not so sure. Around this time, Iwa is seen trying to call Rosen on his cell phone, but nothing works at the moment. Down below, Iwa and Arasi are about to make their move when they suddenly notice someone in the crowd they should be careful with. Inside, Takumi asks Puka if he's sure the person who came earlier was the solitaire. Puka guarantees it's him, but as for the high school girl, he doesn't know what to think of her. After mentioning a few more strange things about her, Puka relaxes while Takumi ponders the matter. Soon he asks Puka to talk about the bastard sons of Sabaramon, hoping the terms connect to his old world. Well, Puka talks about the head court sorcerer of his old world's imperial court, Arius. According to his story, Puka used to be last in line in the Empire's sorcerer ranking, and this Arius was a really nice guy with a political inclination. Once, after being chewed out by his idiot master, Arius showed up to defend him and gave him hope that he could be as strong as them someday. In short, Arius Sabaramon was a celebrity in the Empire back then, with people from all corners traveling just to be in the same room as him. Stating that fact, Puka keeps wondering what the fire-spitting bug has to do with all this. Since he doesn't know what Arius did after the Empire fell, there's no way to know if these so-called bastards bastard sons of Sabaraman groups are part of the Empire. For now, though, he stays quiet and watches the situation. Elsewhere in the city, a redhead, who calls himself Riguru, is seen making a call to one of his superiors at the 𝐂𝐵𝒖𝒏𝒄𝒊𝒆 agency, informing him of updates on the case they're investigating. As soon as he ends the call, he meets up with some guys, planning an attack on the city, and takes them down with his loyal assassin Momoya Agakura, who also looks like... After taking them all out, Momoya himself, one of the most important assassins of the Agakura clan, plays with his victims before calling his sister to ask how things are. Contrary to what he thought, his older sister was disappointed by how easy it was to take down her targets. After finishing her bout, she instructs her little brother to move to Shinjuku to take on his next target. Momoya gets super excited about meeting more people. Meanwhile, Iwa finally manages to talk to Roseanne over a secure line. On the phone, he vents to Roseanne about the fake Puka and his dealings with Solitaire and Lemmings. After hearing him out, Roseanne speaks up and warns Iwa that he's aware of the fake Puka's secrets. However, he can't tell him anything now, since Iwa wouldn't even accept it. Iwa tries to make Roseanne tell him everything, but Roseanne just tells him to trust him and do his job well next time. Besides, if he gets the chance, he advises Iwa to talk to the fake Puka himself to understand the guy. Well, that goes against everything Iwa stands for, but he promises his master he'll try someday. A few hours later, Riguru and Momoya arrive in Shinjuku and spot Iwa. Although they had plans to stay low-key, Momoya is still excited to see a familiar face. As for Iwa and Arasi, they keep relaxing and waiting for an opportunity, while Takumi and Puka keep chatting upstairs. Moments later, Misaki appears with everyone's worst nightmare, a media professional who's really good at her job, Kotu. While Misaki is an idiot who thinks appearing in the news is good, Takumi knows they can't risk having their secrets exposed in the media. The company Kotu works for is called Weekly Dry, and they cover everything from video games to exposies, crimes, and scumbags. At that moment, though, both the real and fake Puka don't know Kotu's true nature, so they treat her like a normal person. The only person with a functioning brain in the room is Takumi, and he's already up to his neck in problems. Kotu tries to break the ice by saying she's there just to invest. Takumi, however, sees through her act and refuses the interview, but Kotu threatens to expose Takumi's shady business of flying drones around the neighborhood if they refuse. In the end, the group has no choice but to... Takumi weighs his options and decides he's going to keep Kotu's attention on them, not on Lisa. As for Kotu, she was busy recalling Takumi's history, thinking it would be quite a story for her publication. For now, though, Takumi isn't her target, so she'd better focus on the fortune teller. Earlier that day, Kotu had asked her old, tired boss for permission to write a story about the fortune teller in Shinjuku. Initially, the boss didn't think there was anything worth writing about there, but after a few minutes of convincing, he finally let her do what she wanted. With the stage for the interview set, Kotu sets up her recording equipment and asks the fortune teller Puka to be receptive so they can finish quickly. After settling a few more things with her, the interview begins. Before saying anything, Kotu notices everything that happened that hour and suspects something is wrong somewhere. To start, she asks them about the strange writing on the wall behind her. Misaki almost gives them away, but Takumi and Sao lie to save them. Having noticed their lie, Kotu gets serious and plans her next questions carefully. Meanwhile, Lemmings reports to Takeru and informs him how tired and exhausted he is from the fight. Hearing that, Takeru gives him the rest of the week off so he can rest and prepare for his main work next week. Lemmings thanks him and leaves the room. Shortly after he leaves, Takeru instructs Taipei, one of the Lei family's assassins, and his partner Bao to investigate Iwa and find out what he knows about Puka's secret. After mumbling some more nonsense, Takeru wants his friends to never underestimate the police force. At the same time, Diro notes Takeru's dirty tactics and plans his next move. As soon as the interview ends, Kotu calls her boss and tells him things are about to get more interesting. In a darker place, Momoya is seen on top of a corpse he decapitated moments before. Apparently Yurai, a friend of Nichida, is back for Lisa, and even though he's pretty shaken by everything that happened, he's keeping his cool. As for the cops who arrived right after the body was planted, Takumi suspects they're in cahoots with the corrupt cops they've been investigating. Before he can make any more valid observations, Takumi spots Iwa outside the building and runs too. As soon as dinner ends, Iwa serves. The moment they're about to eat, the good cops show up, and Iwa asks Puka if he knows what Solitaire came to do there. Puka plays dumb at first, but then Rosorodi's soul in the pen speaks up and warns him he can trust Iwa as a good cop. Then Iwa talks badly about Puka's fortune telling and makes him feel guilty for not letting him talk to Rosorodi's soul. Puka gets offended by his words and stops telling him things. Iwa kind of begs Puka to let him in on the secret before it's too late. But before that, Puka tests Iwa to confirm he's not working for the other side. While the interrogation continues, Momoya and Riguru track Takumi to his private hideout to capture him, knowing full well that the shameless coward won't. As for Iwa and Arasi, they take a walk after the interrogation, discussing their next next move. To keep their plans from leaking to the enemy, they need to be discreet in their actions. Soon, the rain starts to fall, and the duo runs to their hiding spots. Meanwhile, Riguru finally enters Takumi's apartment, right after Momoya ties him up. Instead of being scared of death, Takumi demands that Riguru, his ex-boss, state his intention. Riguru grabs some pens and shoves them into Takumi's thighs before letting the poor guy squirm in pain. As Takumi's screams get louder, Riguru asks him to tell him how they managed to hide the body before it was found. Apparently they'd hidden the body in the basement, only for the cops to find it there and label every resident of that building as criminals. Now that their plan was foiled, Riguru wants to know how they did it. Before he gets his answer, Misaki shows up to rescue poor Takumi, attacking the only real threat in the room, Momoya. Momoya defends himself from most of her attacks and only stops when she does. After about 5 minutes of fighting, Misaki finally exposes herself to Momoya. Momoya, who was waiting for his chance to strike, uses his long blade to slice. Takumi couldn't believe what he was seeing, as he never thought Misaki would die like that. Riguru makes his comment about the girl and receives a phone call from his employer. Answering the call, Riguru apologizes for taking so long to respond and promises to deliver the merchandise. Meanwhile, Puka finally finishes using his first set of gems to transform Misaki from a zombie into a vampire larva. While Riguru and Momoya leave Takumi's house, Iwa lurks and follows them to the point. A few minutes after being sliced in half, Misaki is resurrected as a vampire larva. As soon as her transformation is complete, she assimilates her new reality and tracks down Riguru and Momoya's vehicle. While doing so, she remembers one of her memories with Lisa from 10 years ago. Back then, Lisa noticed that Misaki rarely smiled and asked about it. The poor girl said she'd forgotten how to smile. To help her, Lisa said to do something she'd seen someone do before in her life. And the best thing Misaki could think of was killing, now that she knows how similar she is to her old self. Misaki opens her vampire wings and latches onto the van. Momoya notices the attachment by the sounds on the roof, so he stabs it with his sword, making Misaki fall. Even so, she still tracks them using her keen senses and talks the whole way about how happy she is to have such a wonderful body as a vampire. When they reach the destination, Riguru engages Takumi in conversation to prevent. Meanwhile, Takumi insults the Aga Kuromomo and tells him to his face that he's a piece of shit. Riguru warns that he's no longer the Riguru everyone knew and loved. He's now in cahoots with one of the strongest clans on Earth, and Takumi is allied with the Lei clan. Takumi asks what he means, and Riguru exposes Iwa as an assassin working for the Shinoyamas. An interesting development that surprises even the know-it-all Takumi. At the same time, Iwa is seen hiding in the ceilings, wondering what his course of action is, since it's better to avoid Momoya if he's going to rescue Takumi to make the fake Puka indebted to him. While the interrogation continues, Riguru keeps pointing out how useless and cowardly Takumi's life has been. He thinks that since Takumi is afraid of reality and pain, extracting information from him is easiest. For now, he asks Takumi to say what he was doing in that infamous building, threatening to shoot off part of his body if he refuses to say a word. Meanwhile, Lisa and her girls keep talking about Takumi's new connection and a way to solve his fear and low pain tolerance. Having heard everything his ex-master just told him, Takumi responds with insolence and gets shot in the leg as a final warning. While Takumi endures more rambling, he remembers something Puka told him in the past and reminds himself that everything will be okay. In the end, Takumi still calls it bullshit for the third time in a row. That makes Riguru think about what happened, since the Takumi he knows is usually too scared to even feel pain. To make him feel even more pain, Riguru pours hot sauce into his bullet wound and asks if he's ready to talk now. When Takumi jokes for the fourth time, Riguru grabs a screwdriver and shoves it into the wound to cause more pain. While doing so, he talks about making Sao his next target. But Takumi warns him not to make the Shinoyamas an enemy, and Riguru says not to worry because his bosses will cover for him. At that moment, Iwa emerges from the ceiling and captures Takumi, now that he's found a reason to keep him alive. Meanwhile, Laiwa and Arasi report their findings to Senior Commissioner Habak, who tells them to take it easy and promises to investigate the solitaire further. Speaking of solitaire, Diro, the Superintendent General, hears a knock on the door, but upon checking finds no one. However, when he returns to his office, he finds the Phantom Solitaire sitting in his chair, ready for a rambling session with the chief himself. To start, the idiot talks about people and how different they can be in private, before moving on to talk about jokers and how they matter in conversation. His philosophy focuses on the various ways people show their true colors, including jokers, who are the same kind of person both in private and in public. And Solitaire isn't ashamed to talk about them. Shortly after saving Takumi from certain sudden death, Iwa shows his face to the confused idiot, who asks to confirm if everything Riguru said before was true. Iwa ignores the fool since it's not time for chit-chat and descends from the platform he's on to fight Momoya. When both assassins finally face off, Riguru steps away to give them space to have fun. Iwa draws first blood, but Momoya blocks him. Before the next attack, Momoya pauses to warn Iwa about the dangers of facing him in a one-on-one fight, as it could be deadly for him. He then makes a rude comment about his lost limbs and points out Iwa's trembling legs. Contrary to what Momoya believed, Iwa's legs weren't trembling from fear at all. Instead, they were gaining strength for one of his fastest attacks yet. He lets Momoya have his fun for a few more seconds until his prosthetic legs are ready for the fight. As soon as it's time, Iwa disappears in the blink of an eye and attacks Momoya's blind spots. Momoya quickly adjusts his aim and manages to predict Iwa's path. Once he gets the hang of it, he captures the poor guy, throws him in the air, and gets ready to slice him to pieces. Fortunately, before Iwa gets sliced apart, Misaki the vampire shows up to kick the 2-meter-tall buffoon to the moon. With the attacker out of commission for a while, Misaki takes the opportunity to stroke Iwa like the little kid he is. Riguru, on the other hand, struggles to believe what he's seeing. The girl they just sliced in half an hour ago is somehow not only back to life, but even stronger than before. He starts to fear for his life, as his enemies grow stronger by the second. If one thing is clear though, is that he has to report this development to his superiors as instructed. While 1,000 thoughts race through his head, his partner Momoya gets up, shocked and happy to see the girl he killed back, and more powerful. To match her strength, he releases the restrictions on his clothes, takes a new stance, and invites her to come to him. Before doing anything, Misaki teases him about his long legs, and Momoya chuckles. When it's time to fight, Momoya attacks Misaki and Iwa faster than the speed of sound. While Iwa couldn't keep up, Miss had no problem noticing his tricks, dodging every attack with grace. Their little choreography continues for a while, and ends soon after she narrowly dodges an attack. Knowing full well she can't defeat the man alone, Misaki calls Iwa to work with her and take him down. Before saying anything, Iwa gets worried about Misaki because he can no longer hear her heartbeat. As for Momoya, he keeps wondering how Misaki managed to dodge his perfectly timed attack. Misaki just laughs at the fool for displaying her natural talents. Back at the hideout, Puka and Sao are seen talking about Misaki's new powers as a lava. Although she's pretty strong and highly regenerative, she's not yet a full vampire, so it's better to be careful. As round 2 begins, Misaki fights Momoya with Iwa this time. When they pause to catch their breath, Iwa discovers the true nature of Momoya's power. Apparently, the guy uses his clothes and long limbs to deceive his opponents, making them think of useless defenses and strategies while planning his attack. As soon as Misaki realizes that, she cuts off the forearm holding the crowbar and throws it at Momoya. Momoya, who had trouble processing what was happening, is hit for the first time and analyzes the force of the throw. While Puka and Sao debate whether to tell Iwa everything, the spirit of Rosorodi in the pen asks a favor of Puka. As he turns to the pen, Solitaire is still in Diro's office, giving a lecture on human nature like a barroom philosopher. Near the local station, Iwa receives a call from a restricted number. After answering and talking for a few minutes, he soon realizes it's Rosorodi. Elsewhere, Kotu stares angrily at her PC, trying to connect the dots of the recent case. From what she's found out, Lisa was kidnapped as a child, and the cop who solved the case is none other than the missing Rosorodi. Hearing the voice of his dear friend after so long, Iwa stutters a bit. Eventually, Rosorodi calms him down and asks him to listen. Back to normal, Iwa asks the person on the phone to prove he's the real one. The spirit in the pen says he's real. When Iwa asks to meet, Rosorodi refuses since he's not in physical condition to see him. To make this work, Puka had to poke the vocal cords of a dead pigeon with the possessed pen and use a spell. What a thing. Getting past that, Rosorodi explains why he has someone like Puka on the team and insists that Iwa remember that time is running out. Before hanging up, he talks about the clues he left in his last message and says they need to be ready to counter-attack. Iwa argues a bit with his old friend, then asks for the info he wanted to pass on. When Rosorodi reveals who's at the center of the corruption in the police, Iwa's jaw drops because he can't believe Rosorodi is. Then Diro decides he's had enough of Solitaire's blame game. He knows the guy is just trying to provoke him to see if he's one of those corrupt bastards destroying the force. Well, he responds to Solitaire's offensive jokes and says he's no crime genius. Even so, Solitaire remains firm in his belief, and Diro asks him to reveal why he considers him a person. At this point, Solitaire shuts up, realizing that the Superintendent General is a good man with a criminal face. That said, Momoya and the other 2 protagonists take a moment to discuss strategy before going into round 4. Misaki comes up with a diabolical plan and relays it to Iwa, who's pretty skeptical about the sanity of the idea. After the planning phase, Momoya calls them back to order, and in the first half of round 4, Misaki dodges as many of Momoya's attacks as usual. Then she makes an intentional mistake that Momoya doesn't notice. She lets herself get caught and waits for Iwa to stab her with his prosthetic hands just to catch Momoya. Once Iwa gets what he wants, he captures Momoya and gives him a jaw-dropping shock to knock him out. With the main enemy down, they look for Riguro, but he's nowhere to be found. Iwa struggles to understand Misaki's new form, but keeps calm. Shortly after the fight, Riguro is seen disguised, walking through the train station, thanking Momoya for creating a big enough distraction for him to escape. Now free, he calls one of his superiors at the local station to report Misaki's terrifying transformation. At the moment he makes the call, Yatsu's phone rings, and recognizing the number, he refuses to answer. Meanwhile, Iwa continues his conversation with Rosorodi on the phone, trying to understand why the man would suspect such good people of being cops. After giving the details of his investigation, Iwa finally calms down and speaks normally. When Rosorodi is about to hang up, Iwa asks how he knows. Rosorodi does what he does best. He chews out Iwa. After he hangs up, Arasi tests his boss to see if he's still sane. Once Iwa passes the test, he breathes a sigh of relief. When they're about to continue talking, Iwa receives a call from Sori, the Phantom Solitaire, offering info about the mentor he just discussed with Rosorodi. Initially, Iwa gets a little uneasy, but then the nut job warns that he has his eye on. After Rosorodi hangs up, he turns to Puka and Sao and apologizes for dragging them into this mess. Then he asks them to believe in Iwa's will to do the right thing and expose the scumbags in the corporation. As soon as he finishes the call with Solitaire, Iwa runs to the office of one of the guilty parties to confront him. At the same time, Yatsu's phone keeps ringing and he asks for leave. There he warns Riguro never to call him at work, as it's against the rules. Riguro, however, tells him everything he's seen so far and waits for his response. For now, he's going to stay quiet until the Shinoyamas. While Iwa and Arasi approach the office, they hear the person inside talking about Sabramont. Iwa gets so pissed he wants to break down the door. Almost immediately, the person on the other side starts talking nonsense. Iwa, on the other hand, confronts Senior Commissioner Habak and asks why he would stab him in the back like that. Elsewhere, Takumi and the others soon notice how motionless Momoya is. And as for Yatsu, he has the creepy feeling that something is happening behind the scenes at the station. Through another tunnel in the city, Momoya's older sister is seen trying to talk to her brother on the phone. Since he didn't answer, she decides she'll have to chew him out. Still in Dira's office, rambling non-stop, Solitaire hears a phone ring in a secret compartment near the desk. As soon as he fishes out the phone, he keeps trying to implicate Diro before answering. Diro, who's afraid of no one, urges him to answer the call, pressing the red button to find answers to his stupid questions. Well, Solitaire accepts the bet and answers the phone. On the other end, Grocer's voice comes through the speaker, and he greets Solitaire and the Superintendent General before going on to tell one of two things he has. First, he warns Jiro and Solitaire that Iwa has finally made contact with the missing Rosorodi and is talking to him at that moment. Details: the call Iwa received from Solitaire hadn't happened yet. This news shocks both men as they thought Rosorodi was dead. As for the second news, Grocer exposes Habak as the mastermind of the secret agency 𝑨𝒏𝒖𝒏𝒄𝒊𝒆 on the Force. Diro thanks Grocer for the call and says goodbye. After the call, Solitaire tries to buy the direct line to Grocer, but Diro warns that his number is only exchanged for barter. The criminal tries to make him feel guilty. That said, Diro reminds Solitaire that he's already found his mentor, so he can do whatever he wants with the info. Again, Solitaire refuses to let Diro go. Still, before concluding the meeting, he asks Diro to sell Iwa's number, and judging by what happened next, it seems Grocer sold it. About an hour later, Takumi calls Puka and warns him to be very careful that night, as there's no telling what might happen. Right after hanging up, a horde of fire-spitting bugs floods the entrance of the abandoned warehouse where they are. Meanwhile, Iwa and Arasi confront Habak for mentioning their contact's name and betraying the entire police force. When they ask for valuable info about Sabaraman, the man and Iwa move closer to threaten him, but stop when they notice two strangely dressed cops at Habak's office door. In no time, the cops and some other employees turn into mini fire-spitting bugs, and they all move toward Habak's office to see the man who just mentioned. At the same time, the number of weirdos at Takumi's abandoned warehouse increases every second, and their singing gets even more insane. As for Iwa and Arasi, they have trouble understanding what the hell is happening with these creatures, but keep calm to study the environment before doing anything stupid. Back at the warehouse, Momoya's older sister, Majiria Gakura, appears outside and finds the horde of zombie fire-spitters singing like crazy. She smiles at the symphony of their songs and calms them down. After speaking a few words to soothe their vengeance-thirsty souls, the zombies finally let her pass through them. While walking through the horde, Magiri warns her entourage not to fight those people in raincoats because they won't be able to crush them all, even if they try. Around this time, the horde in the office gets more and more aggressive, all trying to see 𝐂𝐴𝐵𝒄 and probably burn him for uttering the cursed words. Fortunately, 𝐂𝐴 and Arasi do a good job keeping them out of the office. Diro, on the other hand, orders Sari to pay him for letting him go by giving him valuable info. Sari does that by telling him a thing or two about the reality of the fire-spitting bugs, telling Diro that they're just a product of technology without common sense. At that moment, one of the zombies trying to get into the office starts a small fire, and 𝐂𝐴 notices and puts it out before ordering Arasi to do his utmost to keep those zombies away. While Arasi does that, 𝐂𝐴 recalls one of his memories with the coroner in the morgue to figure out how a fire-spitting bug leaves its messages without being there. If his memory is correct, then it must mean that the bugs shoot lasers or something pointy with a hot light source at the target. Before he realizes it, the door closes and some kind of gas is released inside the room. 𝐂𝐴 covers his nose and keeps racking his brains to figure out what's happening in there. Unfortunately, the answer doesn't come as fast as he thought. Back at the abandoned warehouse, 𝐂𝐴 gets more and more worried when the singing outside stops. At that moment, he notices someone entering through the front door and alerts the others. Seconds later, Magiri appears with her crew and stops to greet 𝐂𝐴, her assassin. 𝐂𝐴, upon seeing her, attacks her, but she breaks his prosthetic hands and asks him to join the 𝐂𝐴𝐵𝒄𝒊𝒆 clan to get his limbs back. For context, 𝐂𝐴 met Magiri and her tall brother Momoya on his first mission to eliminate a low-priority target. Apparently, they both had the same targets, but the 𝐂𝐴𝐵𝒄𝒊𝒆 got there first. Instead of aborting the mission and reporting it as complete, the fool 𝐂𝐴 fights the 𝐂𝐴𝐵𝒄𝒊𝒆 alone. After impressing Magiri with his skills, 𝐂𝐴 is invited to join the 𝐂𝐴𝐵𝒄𝒊𝒆 clan. Upon refusal, Magiri removed his real limbs and fixed him so he wouldn't bleed to death. When 𝐂𝐴 woke up, he found all 4 of his limbs in Magiri's hands as trophies. Back then, Magiri told him to call if he needed help, and she'd come running. Also, if he wanted his real limbs back, he should consider joining her clan. Now that she's back in Japan, 𝐂𝐴 is afraid of what she might do. Magiri asks if he's ready to join her family, but then 𝐂𝐴 gives her the shock of her life by saying the Shinoyamas already saved him. Hearing that, Momoya comes back to life and laughs at his sister for wasting so many years trying to recruit someone who didn't want to be saved. Magiri is offended by Momoya's words, but decides to chew him out later, since he's in terrible shape. At that point, Momoya laughs and warns his sister to watch out for the girl above her. Before she can react, Misaki attacks her from above. Unfortunately, she was too slow for the all-powerful Magiri, who bit her crowbar and cut it in half. After reattaching her lower body to her upper, Misaki familiarizes herself with Magiri, who's already super impressed with her vampire skills. She tries to recruit Misaki into the 𝐂𝐴𝐵𝒄𝒊𝒆 clan, but Misaki politely refuses the invitation. Magiri gets ready for round 2, but then notices her brother bleeding profusely and decides to help him, leaving Misaki to Dia. After keeping Misaki at bay for a few seconds, Magiri retrieves her little brother and says goodbye to everyone before leaving. Takumi asks the others to follow her, but unfortunately everyone's had enough crap for one night. Besides, Misaki warns everyone that Magiri is way stronger than they think, so they shouldn't underestimate her. In the next scene, 𝐂𝐵𝒄 starts losing hope now that the fire-spitting bug knows what he's like. 𝐂𝐴 tries to knock some sense into him, but 𝐂𝐵𝒄 is already too altered, having inhaled some powder from a container near him. He soon breaks free and becomes much stronger than his original self. After giving 𝐂𝐴 a solid punch to the face, he gets up and starts talking nonsense about the well becoming a glory hole or some such crap. And Arasi gets the impression that the boss is high, but before they can do anything, the other zombies finally manage to open the door. Back at the hideout, Puka and 𝐴𝐴 study the lightning in the sky while it rains. Once the facts are checked, the duo discusses the elementals of his old and new world. 𝐴𝐴 asks Puka if he can make a deal with lightning elementals to cast lightning-based spells, but Puka says he's not an elementalist, so doing such a thing would be suicidal for him. Although some geniuses have mastered such techniques, most of them are nowhere to be found. Elsewhere, a redhead harvests lightning and annoys his subordinates, who are wet from the rain. The man descends to the roof and starts mumbling something about serpents and mythical creatures from his old world. Apparently, the man is from Puka's old world, as he had the same viral symbol engraved on his cloth. After observing things for so long, the man finally steps onto the stage to welcome the other stage magician from his old world. Before fighting the monster in front of him, 𝐂𝐴 remembers one of his memories with 𝐂𝐵𝒄 when he tried to investigate Rosarodi's disappearance. Back then, 𝐂𝐵𝒄 was pretty pissed at him for trying to find out what happened to Rosarodi, and 𝐂𝐴 thought the senior commissioner was just trying to help and didn't pay attention to the warning. 𝐂𝐴 respects 𝐂𝐵𝒄's wishes for his lost daughter and promises to be less obvious next time. Having heard him apologize, the commissioner promises to see his work through. At the time, 𝐂𝐴 didn't give much importance to 𝐂𝐵𝒄's words. Now that he's found out what kind of piece of shit human being 𝐂𝐵𝒄 is, he knows what he has to do. First of all, he asks 𝐂𝐵𝒄 about his daughter to find out what happened to her in the past, but what he hears next is simply inhuman. Apparently, the scumbag traded his daughter just to get to that position in the 𝐂𝐵 cult group. While the fight is about to start, Yatsu shows up and pulls his partners out of the room. Seconds later, everyone gathers in the hallway with Donja and a few other officers they captured earlier. 𝐂𝐴𝒏𝒄 appears in front of them and seems to be on a call with someone. Before the good cops can do anything, the lights go out and 𝐂𝐴𝒏𝒄 tries to escape. Don and Yatsu try to hold him, but then a suicide cop approaches them with his pistol and points it at the good cops. Yatsu stands up to defend the others, but that makes them lose control of 𝐂𝐴𝒏𝒄. 𝐂𝐴𝒏𝒄 thanks the corrupt cop and escapes the building in real time. As soon as the cop finishes his mission, he kills himself and the lights come back. Iwa could remember the cop's face from the basement search, but still instructs Yatsu and the old man to go after 𝐂𝐴𝒏𝒄. After they leave, the other zombies appear ready to attack Iwa and Arasi. Just as they're about to do so, the zombie effect wears off and everyone returns to normal. Confused, the people who were zombies try to understand what's happening, but then Iwa realizes that the fire-spitting bug's secret was hypnosis all along. Outside, Donya separates from Iwa and goes somewhere to make a call to a certain contact of his. Meanwhile, 𝐂𝐴𝒏𝒄 is seen on top of a random building looking for someone. Minutes after searching, he finally manages to see the redhead, the supposed mentor behind everything that's happened. He greets and thanks the almighty cult master, hoping he's noticed everything he's done on the police force. In response, the redhead warns the idiot that his daughter is pretty pissed at him for leaving her in such a dangerous lab to be used as a guinea pig. That nonsense about trading his daughter to get to that position was actually him donating his only daughter to be used as a guinea pig, all because of his selfish, shitty dreams. Initially, 𝐂𝐴𝒏𝒄 couldn't understand what the redhead was trying to tell him, as he was under the impression that his daughter had died from the dangerous experiments performed on her. However, the redhead makes it clear to him that his daughter was actually the first and only survivor so far. Before he realizes it, a muscular, scarred woman who calls herself Era 𝐂𝐴𝒏𝒄 appears behind him and punches his head until it bleeds. Then she helps her father remember how painful things were for her in the lab and warns that she's there for revenge. The funny thing is that if 𝐂𝐴𝒏𝒄 had even thought to visit her just once after throwing her to the sharks, she might have forgiven him. But as we all know, garbage people will always be garbage people. 𝐂𝐴𝒏𝒄 tries to attack his daughter since it's too late to make amends. But then Sarah, the muscular woman, breaks his arms and feet like nothing, leaving the redhead to enjoy the show. After punching her father more than 15 times in the head and neck, Suara finally holds him to strangle him. What she didn't know was that the brats who just joined Lisa's team, Rina and her older brother, were at another vantage point with a sniper scope aimed at 𝐂𝐴𝒏𝒄's head. Before they shoot, 𝐂𝐴𝒏𝒄 tries to beg for another chance to find the sorcerer from across the sky. Unfortunately, the redhead isn't known for giving second chances. At that moment, Rina shoots 𝐂𝐴𝒏𝒄 in the head, killing him instantly, and informs Lisa that the job is done. Hearing that, Lisa leaves the bar for Puka's place, and the redhead gives Sarah 3 minutes to find and beat up those who shot her father in the head. Sarah doesn't waste time locating them and makes sure to get to their level before they can run. Rina tried to stop her with shots, but Suara was too strong to be beaten by a mere gun. Once she comes face to face with the brats, she mumbles a few things before being thrown into the air by their reinforcements. With more people to fight now, Rina freaks out and complains. Rina's brother remembers the reinforcements are from Lisa and chuckles at the thought of such a thing happening. Suara gets distracted for a second and soon realizes her master is gone. Arriving at Puka's hideout, Lisa asks to borrow his power as there's someone she wants to talk to. She then notices Sao and introduces herself as an assassin broker. She tries to be subtle about referring to Puka's powers, but he soon informs her that Sao is already in on everything. Hearing that, Lisa is shocked but warns him to be very careful about who he gets involved with. After all, there's a bounty on his head as the heir to the powerful Shinoyama Empire. At the same time, Taipei, the huge idiot, updates his boss on the situation at the safe house. Upon learning that Lisa is in the building, Takaru tells him to keep his mouth shut and only intervene if things get ugly. Then Lisa gets more direct with her request and asks Puka to follow her to a place. Uhuka worries about Sao's safety, while Lisa reassures him that Taipei is there to take care of her. With that, Puka accompanies Lisa to the top of a building. Meanwhile, Diro and Iwa finally meet to discuss 𝐂𝐴𝒏𝒄 and his violent tendencies. Iwa asks the boss if he always suspected that 𝐂𝐴𝒏𝒄 was the mole in the corporation, and Diro replies that not exactly, but he always knew that someone high up was working for the enemy. The only time they came close to exposing that person was 5 years ago, but the person in charge of the case simply disappeared with all the evidence. When they reach the top of the building, Puka notes the soul of someone who just died and tells Lisa that he can make that soul visible to them right there on top of the building. Lisa tells him to go ahead, and Puka reveals that the person is 𝐂𝐴𝒏𝒄. Lisa greets the disfigured soul, which recognizes her and blames her for moving Rosorodi's body 5 years ago. The soul of Rosorodi trapped in the pen recognizes 𝐂𝐴𝒏𝒄 as one of his suspects, but then wonders why he's dead now. Or did Lisa kill him in a place like that? Questions and more questions flood Rosorodi's mind as he watches Lisa interrogate 𝐂𝐴𝒏𝒄. In the end, Lisa asks 𝐂𝐴𝒏𝒄 to reveal the name of the person who ordered Rosorodi's death. 𝐂𝐴𝒏𝒄 plays hardball for a while, but then Puka invades his mind and forces him to deliver the name of the mastermind. It seems that 𝐂𝐴𝒏𝒄 only killed Rosorodi as an offering to the bastard sons of Sabaramon. While he mumbles about his evil act, he recognizes Puka's powers and understands that he's the person he's been looking for all along. Continuing, he talks about his daughter and the sacrifice he made just for the cause. At this point, Puka is furious as 𝐂𝐴𝒏𝒄𝒊𝒆's memories flood his mind, and he witnesses how diabolical the bastard was to people in his life. 𝐂𝐸𝒏𝒄𝒊𝒆 could also feel the corpse god's memories in his head, and he witnessed a single moment in the necromancer's life when he was killed by his own addict father, all because of some drinks and drugs. At the moment of his death, he also found out that his father sold his siblings and mother just to get money to buy more drugs and who knows what else. Having remembered that, he asked Lisa's permission to torture that bastard to death right in front of him. Once Lisa gives him the green light, Puka turns the underworld into a living hell for 𝐂𝐴𝒏𝒄𝒊𝒆's soul. While torturing him, he remembers the moment he was resurrected as an undead after his master and a friend from the Empire found him stabbed earlier. Before even being able to speak, the little kid heard his master talk a bunch of nonsense to his Empire friend and the friend as well. When they start talking about their dear friend, also known as Mr. Bag of Bones, they talk to him as if absolutely nothing had changed. The corpse god gets a little confused by this, but then the Empire friend warns him that they don't think badly of him at all. Besides, he warns him to avoid taking revenge on his father, who's a nobody, because the Empire would always be on his side anytime, any day. Having remembered that, Puka keeps trying to restrain himself from acting on pure emotion. Just when he thought it would be impossible to stop, the soul of his friend, the one from the Empire, appears to remind him to keep his sanity. Lisa and the others could see the guy, and were worried about summoning spirits that could wipe them all out. Meanwhile, the redhead is seen heading back to his lair nearby, when he suddenly notices his strange presence that paralyzes him instantly. As for Iwa, he gathers the remaining officers at the station and asks them to help him catch the solitaire and 𝐂𝐵𝒄, before openly asking them to do his bidding. He apologizes for being a bad leader, but honestly no one cares about that now, so everyone advises him to move forward. Continuing, Iwa works with the idea that 𝐂𝐵𝒄 is still alive, so he urges his people to work as hard as they can to catch the bastard before he flees the country. After hearing the boss lay down only truths for a few minutes, everyone gets off their asses and gets to work finding the criminals. Seconds after showing up to stop his friend from doing something terrible, Puka's friend from the Empire wants him to stop overdoing it just to get his revenge. He then urges him to remember the warning they gave him 100 years ago and to take it seriously next time he feels like playing leader over people's souls. Besides, he tells Puka not to worry about staying in the new world for long, as he'll soon disappear when his time runs out. At that point, Puka stops torturing 𝐂𝐵𝒄 and instead leaves things for his friend to handle. Before facing the attacker, his friend checks out how modern the world is now and tells Puka that the others have been longing to see such a beautiful world. Puka apologizes for not being there for them initially, but his partner assures him they'll wait until the right moment to appear. That said, Puka turns his back to his friend and tells Lisa a thing or two about him. When Lisa calls the guy a good guy, Puka corrects her and tells her not to be fooled by that cute, innocent appearance. At the same time, Puka's friend goes crazy and starts using his dangerous magic on 𝐂𝐵𝒄𝒊𝒆's soul. For context, a flashback shows the moment the necromancer discovered his friend's secret hobby. After following his friend to a secret basement, the corpse god found his master and another guy torturing a criminal to death. He stays silent while watching his friend stab the criminal's brain. Now in the present, the same friend crushes 𝐂𝐵𝒄𝒊𝒆 into a puddle of blood, using a technique similar to the one he used 100 years ago. Puka scolds the man for being so reckless in his actions, but his friend disappears soon after. Concomitantly, the redhead notices the strange energy disappearing from this world. That excites him as he considers seeing the bug or his compatriot from the same world he came from. Moments after seeing his friend vanish into thin air, Puka picks up his shark plushie and tells his partner that his desire for peace remains the same. In the next scene, Raguru is seen on a bus, planning his next steps now that 𝐂𝐵𝒄𝒊𝒆 has been caught. Suddenly, someone points a hot laser at his hand, making him drop his phone. The old lady sitting in front of him picks up the device and starts operating it, which is already pretty strange by itself. Raguru tries to get his phone back, but then everyone jumps on him like zombies, while the fire-spitting bug's servants try to catch him. Then Misaki calls Puka as soon as they get back to the safe house and finds out he's with Lisa. Meanwhile, 𝐶𝑎O is seen helping Iwa tape one of his prosthetic arms. While doing that, she talks to Iwa and tells him not to feel bad about her knowing his secret identity as an assassin working for her father. On the contrary, she's grateful that he's been working behind the scenes to keep them safe for so long. Iwa feels bad precisely because he knows he's been working for his own benefit, not for the sake of the families. Around this time, Takumi manages to talk to Lisa, who tells him to get his injured leg checked out at the bar. After the call, 𝐂𝐸𝒏𝒄𝒊𝒆 asks Puka to ask Lisa something on his behalf. After hearing him, Puka asks Lisa to tell him how she knew 𝐂𝐵𝒄 was the mole the whole time. Lisa then starts talking about her insider on the police force, Donja Toa, including how she found out about 𝐂𝐵𝒄𝒊𝒆's betrayal before anyone else. Earlier that day, she had worried about Donya betraying Iwa, but then Donya says he's doing it for a good reason. By being the bad cop, he can ensure that Iwa and the others don't get their hands dirty in the name of the greater good. At that moment, Iwa finishes giving orders to the other officers before checking Rosorodi's final message to him. He explains to Arasi and the other two that if Rosorodi doesn't come to see him, then he'll expose the organization that killed him so that he can finally be free to come see him. After hearing Lisa's words, Puka asks her to leave some final words for Rosorodi so that he can deliver them to him if he ever finds his soul. Lisa begs Puka to say goodbye to her love as tears fill her eyes. At the same time, Iwa fills himself with hope at the thought of seeing his long-lost colleague. If he can see Rosorodi one last time, then he'll welcome him with open arms. Elsewhere, Riguro wakes up and finds himself tied to a chair. Soon, Solitaire appears to brag about his new catch. However, when he sees Riguro's face, he gets confused because he has no idea who he is. A few minutes later, Puka and Lisa return to the bar and find Misaki along with Takumi, who's having his wound treated. He argues a bit with Misaki and then offers to heal Takumi, but only if he can turn into a corpse. Takumi refuses the offer and instead chooses to endure the pain. Puka notes the atmosphere in the bar and promises to do something about it. Meanwhile, Solitaire questions the man in front of him and suspects he's in cahoots with Habak. Continuing, he turns to the zombies near him and tries to figure out the real reason they called him to help them dismantle the organization from the inside out. When they hear everything Solitaire has to say, the fire spitters are impressed with his quick thinking and insight. That makes them change their minds about Solitaire's lifestyle. For now though, he needs to play dumb so the man doesn't notice his trick. So, as soon as Solitaire turns to continue interrogating him, Riguru does his best to distract Solitaire, stringing him along with completely useless info. While Solitaire plays along, Riguru starts thinking of a way out of this tricky situation. After receiving Taipei's report on Takumi and Iwa's condition, Takeru realizes that the enemy isn't as relaxed as they thought. On the contrary, they might be targeting them with everything right now. Takeru asks Taipei a few questions about Iwa, including why he's so indifferent to what happens to him. Taipei gives his reasons and then listens to the lady next to him. The lady tells him about the attacks the enemy has been carrying out against her people, and Taipei mentions that his savings have been deducted from his bank account. Having heard everything, Takeru gets even more cautious and worried about what comes next. After receiving the huge deposit in his bank account, Iwa decides to report to Rosen. After making the conference call, Rosen tells him that he's already heard everything that happened to him the night before. He thanks Iwa for saving his daughter and keeping the others safe. Iwa gets all embarrassed and changes the subject to talk about his arms and legs. He then apologizes for losing them, but Rosen tells him not to worry about it because Puka, who's right behind him, has already promised to fix everything for him. Iwa turns around and finds Puka there, just waiting to be noticed. Puka apologizes for scaring him and asks Iwa's permission to fix his lost limbs. Iwa initially tells Puka that he can't trust him, but then Puka gives him a hint of the real truth and challenges him to a serious fight in the basement. If he wins, then Puka will tell him everything he needs to know. When they get there, Iwa urges Puka to fight him so he can expose him as the fraud he really is. When it's time to fight, Puka summons a two-headed tiger monster and makes them attack Iwa. From the way Iwa fought the tigers, Rosen was quite impressed that he still has so much power, even after losing one of his fighting arms. After some random chatter, Rosen warns Puka not to let Iwa know the real truth, because he might get furious and cause widespread chaos. Puka warns Rosen that he's ready for violence at this point, so there's nothing to worry about. That said, he stops the tiger from hitting Iwa and thanks them for the fight. The tigers take a liking to Iwa and lick him all over. Shortly after, Iwa takes a shower to clean himself. While in the shower, he thinks about the fight he had earlier and realizes that Puka was holding back the whole time, even after he gave it his all in combat. After the shower, Iwa visits Puka and asks his name before letting him fix his arm. Puka tells him to call him the corpse god, and that leaves Iwa quite surprised. The next minute, Puka fixes his arm and gives him the right arm of a colossal dragon, whose lightning once illuminated the entire world. In exchange for the hand, Puka asks Iwa to swear unconditional loyalty to his cause. Before we continue the main story, another kind of boring flashback is shown to explain how the necromancer got the dragon's right hand in his old world. After being defeated by 𝑨𝒏𝒄𝒊𝒆, the second highest ranked sorceress of the empire, the colossal dragon proposed a 200-year contract conditional on buying his corpse back from the guild. During the contract period, the colossal dragon's soul allowed 𝑨𝒏𝒄𝒊𝒆 and her apprentice at the time, also known as the corpse god, to use his corpse for whatever they wanted, no matter the situation. Now that the corpse god has finally found a use for the dragon's right hand, he needs to make sure all the effort will be worth it. Meanwhile, Takumi takes the day off and listens to Sao ramble non-stop about shark movies and their peculiar characteristics. And Misaki is there in the corner, just existing like she's not doing anything. After listening to her talk so much nonsense about sharks for so long, Takumi asks her to get to the point and stop wasting their precious time. Sao finally stops beating around the bush and tells Takumi that they need to know how original original Misaki is as a vampire. Since she's already almost won, they don't want the enemy to discover her strengths and weaknesses before they do themselves. Takumi sees the intelligence in her suggestion and finally decides to ask the most important questions. He asks Misaki if she's affected by sunlight, and she replies no. Continuing, he then asks if she likes sucking blood. Sao answers the question for her, telling Takumi that her bloodlust can be resolved through evolution and using magic to weaken her impulses. She then goes on to talk about a bunch more useless nonsense before finally wrapping things up on a positive note. After giving Iwa a new arm, Puka offers his apologies for giving Iwa something he might not like. Laying out the facts, he asks him again to become his ally, right in front of Roseanne on the same conference call, and Iwa finally convinces himself to believe Puka's story. When he asks about the plushie that Puka always has around, Puka and Rosen explain that the real Puka is the one possessing the doll. Hearing that, Iwa familiarizes himself with the doll in his own way and continues listening to Puka's plan for the future, now that they know someone is coming after him. Then the fire-spitting bugs talk to Solitaire, whom they've affectionately nicknamed Summer Bug, to explain their goals so far. To start, they say they're willing to take down anyone who has ties to the bastard sons of Sabramon, because they believe their founder is a bastard son from the other side of the sky. Initially, Solitaire thought they were referring to an alien from outer space, but then the fire-spitting bugs inform him that the person they're talking about is far from being an ET. Solitaire reasons with them and eventually realizes that his blimp stunt must connect somewhere. In the next scene, Iwa visits one of the local police branches to investigate an old case. One of his colleagues, a woman, soon shows up to check on him and asks what he's doing there. Apparently, while everyone, including the police, thought the fire-spitting bugs first appeared only a few years ago, it turns out they've been around for much, much longer. Also, something didn't seem right about them, and Iwa was determined to find out what they weren't seeing. At the same time, Misaki is seen preparing the next group of clients to have their fortunes checked at Puka's fortune-telling shop. At that exact moment, the redhead from the night before appears disguised as one of the clients, along with Lulu, his little daughter, and Sarah, the lab rat daughter of Habak. In the first few minutes there, Sarah already feels some pretty strange vibes from the whole place. But then they meet Makoto, who also happens to be a medical examiner from the police force and knows Iwa very, very well. The guy was simply fascinated by Puka's fortune-telling shop, so much so that he made it his life's mission to convert non-believers into true believers. Even when he talks about the Invisible Hands video to the redhead and his crew, Makoto remains optimistic and gives a pretty funny and far-fetched explanation for why the hands were on the roof at that exact minute. The redhead just laughs at Makoto's ridiculous comments until it's his turn. Just as he's about to have his fortune checked, Makoto reveals his name to the redhead and enters the fortune room. Shortly after he leaves, the redhead notes his name and his fortune wish. Misaki writes his name as a civilian and his fortune wish to know his destiny over the next 100 years, as well as the other people he'll meet. Back at the station, Iwa asks Makoto to give his opinion on something. However, the female colleague tells him that Makoto has been missing work lately, as he recently became interested in a kid who reads fortunes. Hearing that, Iwa realizes that Makoto is already deeply involved in this fortune-telling trick, and that it may already be too late to pull him out. As soon as he finishes reading Makoto's fortune, Puka pauses and discusses the remaining details of his business with Iwa. To start, he tells Iwa that Rosorodi's soul is the one in the pen he uses to write fortunes. Although scared, Iwa still thinks to tell the Solitaire, as he imagined that Solitaire and Rosorodi knew each other that way. Puka asks Rosorodi if he knew the Solitaire that way, and Rosorodi's soul answers with a resounding no. When Puka tries to think of Solitaire's ultimate goal, Misaki asks if his pause is over. Puka composes himself and tells her to bring in the next person choice. As soon as Civil enters the room, the entire atmosphere around Puka changes drastically, and the air inside gets even colder. Puka uses his evil eye to get a look at the guy, and he finds millions of souls all crowding around him with eyes full of an almost palpable obsession. Puka tries to understand what the hell could be happening, but there's simply no viable explanation for how a single person can have so many souls linked to him. Civil soon notices something is wrong after their long pause and asks Puka if there's a problem. Puka casts a spell to keep his face normal and avoid completely freaking out. Once that's settled, he asks the guy about his peculiar life. Civil ignores that question and decides to investigate further just to get to know the real Puka, since he seems to be super important. He questions him about his connection to the Solitaire, but Puka denies every little thing he knows about that complete idiot. At that moment, Solitaire is seen fiddling with the computer while trying to force Riguru to give up his face for an experiment. Riguru gets pretty worried about the old guy acting like a complete buffoon and does his best to figure out what's wrong. Solitaire strings him along, and Riguru asks about the cell phone. One of the bugs replies that the device has already turned to ashes. Riguru complains about the phone's high price, and the bug asks if he's not afraid of anything at all. When the bug talks about the bastards of Sabaramon, Riguru plays dumb and asks what the word means. At that point, Solitaire butts in and puts himself in the same boat as Riguru before continuing to scheme his diabolical plan. Meanwhile, Puka continues continues his normal therapy session with 𝐂𝐨𝒏𝒄𝒊𝒆 and asks him to detail his divine wish. 𝐂𝐶ville uses an example and asks Pukka if he thinks relatives of criminals should be punished along with them to prevent future revenge. Pukka says he wishes this world doesn't reach that point. 𝐂𝐶ville chuckles and continues talking about a certain nutjob who's been hunting him and his friends for 100 years. Pukka sympathizes and offers to lend a hand. However, 𝐂𝐶ville keeps talking about crazier and crazier things regarding punishment and other barbarities, making Pukka wonder if he's real or just a delusion. As soon as he finishes rambling, he talks about the justification for taking out the bugs, making Pukka think he knows about the fire-spitting bugs and drawing a family tree of revenge and hate to support his reason for killing the relatives of those they kill illegally. At that point, the ghosts around the guy were already applauding in support of his words, and Pukka got pretty scared just imagining such a thing. When he finishes his second rambling session, Pukka asks if he truly believes what he just said. 𝐂𝐶ville allows him to guess the answer, and Pukka decides to do something he's never done in his life, since 𝐂𝐶ville doesn't have evil eyes to see his sigils. Pukka uses them freely to cast a spell that sends the remaining clients far away from there. Once he's sure the building is clear of civilians, Pukka invokes a higher power to shake 𝐂𝐶ville's soul, all to see what his reaction would be. Well, he resolves it in the blink of an eye, and 𝐂𝐶ville can feel his mana exploding inside him. While 𝐂𝐶ville is super excited to have such a genius in this world, Pukka is shitting his pants at the absurd density of this guy's mana. 𝐂𝐶ville then gets confused because he was sure Pukka was a real human. He considers the possibility of someone from another world controlling Pukka's body and decides he's going to investigate that quickly. After thinking a bit, he asks Pukka about the strange feeling he felt earlier, and Pukka asks him to stay calm so he can take a deeper look into his soul. Just as he's about to finish, Lulu, 𝐂𝐶ville's little girl, runs and warns 𝐂𝐶ville to get out of that place as soon as she receives a nudge from an elemental that says the place is dangerous. Pukka takes a look at the girl and notices the elemental spirit living inside her. That reminds him of someone similar in his old world, the Chancellor, who once told him about the suffering he'd have to endure to achieve his goals. 𝐂𝐶ville tries to buy a little more time, but then Sarah and Lulu tell him not to ignore the elemental's warning. Pukka sees the scene unfolding in front of him and realizes that meeting him can only be destiny. When he least expects it, 𝐂𝐶ville gets up and apologizes for leaving so soon. He promises to come back as a friend, but as soon as he walks out the door, Taipei appears out of nowhere and punches Sarah in the face. Moments before his fight with Suara and the redhead, Taipei had found 𝐂𝐸, the crazy reporter, while she was on her way to the infamous building. 𝐂𝐸 found the big guy looking at the building and stopped to ask some questions about the solitaire and other things. Before answering, Taipei calls Takeru to ask permission to speak. Takeru, realizing she was investigating Pukka, allows Taipei to play along to find out what she knows. Taipei lets 𝐂𝐸 take him to the building after getting permission, but when they reach the entrance, they feel a chill inside, and Taipei feels a deep, dark death. Seconds later, he smells the redhead and leaves 𝐂𝐸 at the door to go meet with him. 𝐂𝐸 is kind of shocked to see the big guy acting so strange, but plays along and follows him. When she gets upstairs, she finds Misaki trying to get Taipei off their property so he can come back later. 𝐂𝐸 distracts Misaki with her rambling for a second, allowing Taipei to notice Suara leaving the fortune room. As soon as he confirms that it's her attacking his people, he punches her in the gut. After the attack, 𝐂𝐶ville asks if Suara is okay, and Suara tells him not to worry about her. 𝐂𝐸, on the other hand, feels pretty sad and stupid for letting such a suspicious big guy into the building like an idiot. Moving on, 𝐂𝐶ville offers to help Sarah in the fight, but Sarah's pride won't allow it. Taipei's partner, Bao, passes an update to Takeru and explains how Taipei managed to identify the girl using the special perfume that only the Riley family uses. When asked why Taipei would attack in such a situation, Bao says it's because he wants to fight a strong opponent. With that, the fight begins with Suara and Taipei going at each other like wild animals. Iwa notices the commotion in the hallway and quickly hides Sao to protect her. Also, Pukka appears and instructs Misaki to take the reporter outside. As for 𝐂𝐶ville, he receives an important message while trying to analyze the Shinoyama pawn's strength and whispers something in Lulu's ear. Misaki, on the other hand, struggles to get 𝐂𝐸 out of the scene for her protection and everyone else's. When 𝐂𝐶ville sees a camera flash, he notices Taipei getting distracted and uses a very rare form of magic to palm punch the big guy, sending him flying a few meters back. Pukka recognizes that form of magic as the one Simon used in his old world. In a flashback, the corpse god remembers the first time he saw Arius from his old world harvest or steal power from an elemental. After impressing even Sloa herself, Arius chuckles and tells the necromancer that he envies the love and affection he manages to spread to others and even to deities. Someone like him can't feel such love. All he can do is long for the world. After dealing with the nuisance, 𝐂𝐶ville pays Pukka generously with a necklace of rare gems. While they try to sort out the situation, Taipei throws a knife at 𝐂𝐶ville. Sarah takes the stab, pulls out the knife, and heals the wound instantly, shocking both Taipei and Pukka at the same time. 𝐂𝐶ville ends up praising Pukka's ability to stay calm, since he didn't expect him to be like that in the face of so much danger. Pukka responds with elegance, impressing impressing 𝐂𝐨𝒏𝒄𝒊𝒆 even more. When it's time to go, he says goodbye and promises to return soon. With the guy out of the picture, 𝐶𝐸 receives a call from the boss, and Puka talks about the bastard son of 𝐶𝐸raman they just saw. Now with Takumi, Puka explains that he initially thought 𝐂𝐸l was the real Arios, since the way he used magic reminded him of the sorcerer. However, after analyzing the tone of his soul, it's pretty evident that the guy is different from the Arios he knows, but they're still connected. At that moment, he looks for the plushie and soon realizes that the real Puka has been kidnapped. On their way back to the hideout, Suara asks the boss why he interrupted her fight. 𝐂𝐸l says it's because he no longer feels the need to hide his power. Since he managed to enter the country using his real name, he might as well try to unravel the rod using his last name for his evil organization. Then a video of the hero acting like a pop idol goes viral online. In the video, the face of the poor guy seems to have been photoshopped onto an idol's body, and he's seen asking for information from anyone who knows about the not-so-secret organization, the Bastard Sons of 𝐶𝒏𝒄𝒊𝒆. Elsewhere in Japan, the real idol, 𝑟yo sees the video and recognizes the body as his own. Although the guy isn't that mad, he's just surprised that technology has advanced to the point of creating deep fakes. Currently, it's blowing up on social media, and the solitaire is getting all the attention he needs. 𝐂𝐸l and his partners keep talking about the next step, but when Sarah asks if he's okay giving such an incredible gem to Puka, the guy replies yes. Meanwhile, Puka is seen searching the whole room for the plushie, only to realize the poor thing had already been kidnapped. After telling Takeru everything he learned, 𝐶𝐸 receives the order to start hunting those three. 𝐂𝐸l, Sarah, and Lulu are seen talking about the plushie they stole from Puka before. It turns out that Lulu received a vision from her elemental pointing at the plushie, so 𝐂𝐸l simply had to grab it for further investigation. Sarah asks for a better explanation, and the man says he feels that the person from his world is busy communicating with Puka through the plushie. After that, 𝐂𝐸l starts to stray from the path of truth with excessive rambling. Honestly, the plushie had to laugh at how ridiculous 𝐂𝐸l's theories became. However, when 𝐂𝐸l talks about the firebugs burning the plushie, the real Puka gets scared. Currently, Puka knows where they are, but he needs to be careful with his next steps. Meanwhile, Puka receives a visit from Kotu, who apologizes for bringing 𝐶𝐸 into the building, and from 𝐶𝐸 himself, who asks him for a favor. Puka asks 𝐶𝐸 why he attacked the guy before, and 𝐶𝐸 tells him not to worry about it. Moving on, everyone goes to the fortune room and talks with Takeru, who explains the situation before asking Puka to use his fortune-telling skills to identify the culprits. Although it's not exactly Puka's forte on paper, he promises to lend a hand. Before ending the call, he tells Puka about the video the solitaire posted earlier. Elsewhere, Riguru watches the deepfake of the solitaire that exposed him and freaks out right after asking why he photoshopped his face onto the idol's body. Well, the solitaire gets scared for his life and asks the calm Riguru if he's really one of the 𝐶𝒏𝒄𝒊𝒆's sons. Riguru chuckles and says he's just their go-to guy, since they never even told him why the fire-spitting bug has been burning them for so long. If the fire-spitting bug could explain things to him, then he might understand the situation a little better. In the next scene, Magiri is seen talking some nonsense about a 100-year feud that's been plaguing the underworld for a while now. At this point, she feels that something big is about to happen, and she needs to be ready for whatever comes. At that moment, Solitaire tries to give an identity to the bugs, but they correct him, warning that they're not an entity, just errors or bugs in the real world. At the same time, Iwa has already discovered that the bugs have existed for 100 years. As for why they're targeting the 𝐶𝒏𝒄𝒊𝒆 group, they still don't know. At that moment, Kayakusa, one of the colleagues, shows up with a 100-year-old case about a fire in Shinjuku that claimed the lives of 16 men and women who were piled up in adjacent cells at the time of the fire. The only strange thing about this incident is that the case was suppressed by the press. To investigate this, Iwa sends his people to check old tabloids and newspapers from the time, while he and Arasi follow Riguru's trail. Speaking of the devil, they find Arasi acting like a madman. When he returns to normal, he says he was just controlling his emotions. At the same time, Takumi has the same feeling and pauses work for now. Uka, however, keeps trying to unravel Solitaire's plan, while still on the phone with Takeru. He asks Takeru to come in 3 days for the fortune-telling ritual. Takeru sees this as an excuse for him to search for his mother online and other things. He accepts the proposal on the condition that the reporter does an exclusive story on everything in 3 days. Having no other option, he accepts his new mission and makes plans to continue his investigation. With that, they set the next meeting for 6 p.m. in 3 days and end the call on a good note. After the call, Takeru instructs Bal to investigate Puka for the next 3 days, and also another person to investigate those 3 without getting involved with them. In a random subway garage, the redhead, 𝐂𝐸l, Sarah, and Lulu are approached by the agency's goons who want them to leave the country at the Elder's request. 𝐂𝐨𝒏𝒄𝒊𝒆 refuses to answer them, and the idiots point their guns at Lulu as blackmail. At that moment, the elemental protecting Lulu freaks out and kills everyone with rocks. Then Misaki throws a fit when she finds out that the real Puka is missing. Puka, however, tells her not to be hasty, since the little girl possessed by the elemental spirit could turn the tables on them. At that moment, the elemental keeps crushing every enemy in the garage until everyone is dead. After the hassle with the thugs, Lulu gets sad and regretful for those she killed in the garage. When they get home, 𝐂𝐨𝒏𝒄𝒊 strokes her and reassures her that no one died in the garage, knowing full well he's lying. Sawara appears, hugs Lulu, and asks 𝐂𝐨𝒏𝒄𝒊 why the organization's elders are trying so hard to hide their tracks. 𝐂𝐨𝒏𝒄𝒊 says it's because they're deathly afraid of the fire-spitting bug. Fortunately, he has an interest in all this, so he's going to destroy some things before something happens to him. For now though, he's going to work on exposing himself to the city so that the bugs appear to destroy him. Then he can wipe them all out at once. Then Riguru asks Sari to tell him why he went to visit Puka on the night of the invisible hands. Sari asks why he wants to know, and Riguru says it's because Sari may have already found the thing his employers have been looking for a century. Riguru then warns him not to act carelessly as he might lose his head next time. Sari thanks him for the warning and goes about his day. Elsewhere, Momoya finds the deepfake video of Riguru online and laughs hysterically at the content. Apparently, Momoya seems to think Riguru is friends with the Solitaire and even decides to ask for an autograph later, if they happen to meet again. Moving on, he talks about his sister, who is currently on the roof of some random building near Puka's building. There she finds Bao, Iwa's older sister, watching the Shinoyamas from the building and tries to warn her that she's going to take her Iwa when she gets the chance. Shortly after, she notices Bao trying to alert the others about her presence and quickly snatches the phone from her hand before telling her to have some manners. At that point, Bao chains both their hands and warns Magari to never hurt or touch her little brother because she's the only older sister he needs. Before doing anything, Bao remembers a time in the past when she killed a person who tried to take her brother away and then thanks Magari for hurting her brother initially, as it helped her get out of that cursed family. Surprised, Magari asks Bao why she hates her family so much, but before Bao can say anything, Magari breaks the chain binding Bao and gets ready for a real fight. Bao warns Magari that she was never a fan of that traditional nonsense, so she's going to fight Magari to the death to protect her brother. In the next scene, Puka takes Iwa to a jewelry store to help him understand the use of gems to recharge mana, including his new arm. Iwa, understanding the essence of it, asks why he can't just get bigger stones for better mana output, and Puka says they still don't have the money for that. At that moment, Iwa remembers how relieved he was when the whole group wanted to report the kidnapping of the real Puka to Rosen, but couldn't because he was at the hospital for his routine checkup. Iwa feels remorse for being so clumsy and not caring much about protecting poor Puka. The necromancer Puka recognizes the feeling and helps Iwa understand that he can talk to him if he needs to. Iwa accepts the offer and the two go to a private place to talk about Iwa's feelings. There, Iwa tells Puka how envious and angry he was at the real Puka for not caring about his father's emotions and for acting so out of place. To him, Rosen is someone who should be respected, and he feels sad that he can't be Rosen's real son, since the bond he has with that man is something like that of father and son, especially after he helped him with the prosthetic limbs back then. After having a breakdown, Iwa calms down and concludes that he's just jealous. Having heard everything he said, Puka tells Iwa about his own shitty father and helps him understand that he also had his share of problematic family members. To finish, he warns Iwa that there's a visible bond between him and Rosen, and that's what matters. While he still can, he should cherish that bond and make sure he doesn't destroy it. Iwa nods in agreement and ends the conversation there. Later that night, Takeru receives a call from Limings, who tells him he's finished his work abroad and will be back in Japan soon. Takeru welcomes him back home and prepares a job for him as soon as he arrives. When he returns home, Puka finds Takumi and continues apologizing for putting them in danger. Takumi tells him not to worry since they're all in this together. At that moment, they see another notification of one of Solitaire's tricks. This time, the idiot makes random objects float in the sky like it's no big deal. The police struggle to figure out what's happening, and Iwa exposes the stunt as being from an imitator. Coming up with some possible suspects, Iwa ignores them and chooses to focus on the most urgent cases. Elsewhere, Solitaire delights in the work of his imitator and hopes they'll visit him. When his first visitors show up, they reveal themselves to be the redhead and his goons. Initially, Solitaire doesn't recognize them, but then when 𝐂𝐨𝒏𝒄𝒊 shows him the original insignia from the broadcast drawing and where it came from, Solitaire becomes interested in meeting them. Back at the hideout, Misaki finds Puka doing his thing and talks to him about the friend he summoned when dealing with 𝐂𝐨𝒏𝒄𝒊's ghost. Puka warns her with some emotional comments about his friends from the other world before moving on to talk about those three idiots causing trouble everywhere. After mentioning some depressing things, Misaki holds his cheeks and advises him to do whatever he wants and force others to follow his orders, just like she dragged him into her world in the first place. Hearing that, Puka thanks her and continues preparing to go save the real Puka. Moments after hearing the trio's real motives, Solitaire negotiates terms and conditions with them before recreating their earlier imitator trick. Apparently, Civil was getting annoyed by his imitator, but then Solitaire helps him understand how easy it is to replicate such a trick. Seeing him do the same thing Civil did, the trio gets very interested in the guy, thinking he's also possessed like Lulu. Elsewhere, Arasi and Aiwa arrive at the building where the fire started 100 years ago. Although it looked all neat on the outside, especially now that some dynasty had bought it, something still didn't seem right, since they'd never tried to sell the place before. Iwa asks the boss if the building has any connection to Solitaire, and Iwa helps him understand that Solitaire had already joined the fire-spitting bug, so there's a good chance he knows the history of the place. Meanwhile, Solitaire doesn't shut up and agrees to help Civil present himself to the enemy if they manage to survive an attack from the fire-spitting bug. Before Civil can say anything, the bugs surround him and chant their anthem before attacking the three. During the attack, Solitaire begins to fear for his life, afraid of being roasted by the fire. While trying to flee, Civil defends himself from the fire with his magic and faces even more attacks from the others. While defending himself, he recites the history that led to the creation of the fire-spitting bugs. Apparently, 100 years ago, the Saberman group gathered 18 men and women, mostly children, and performed human experiments on them. To keep the secret, they burned down the entire facility and found only 16 bodies in the rubble, meaning that 2 of the supposed test subjects escaped and gave rise to the fire-spitting bugs to avenge the deaths of the others, hunting down the rest of the Sabaraman bastards. After telling the story, Civil turns the tables on the bugs and makes them understand that they are also pests in this world. Once they accept that, the bugs promise to disappear from the face of the earth as soon as they finish burning every last bastard son of Sabaraman. That said, they create a smoke screen and retreat for now. Civil is impressed with their battle intelligence, but captures Solitaire to find out where the bugs might be. Solitaire tries to play dumb, but since he's dealing with people like him, there's little he can do to lie. He tries to bore them to death with meaningless info, but Civil keeps asking why he visited the building in Shinjuku. Solitaire says he already has his answer. Besides, they always say to be careful. But what happens when the careless ones withstand the pressure? This rambling distracts the trio for a while, so Solitaire takes the opportunity to run. Moments after he leaves, Sarah asks the boss how he managed to do that wind magic, and Civil says he just tried and succeeded. As the supposed receptacle of the great sorcerer Arius Sabaraman, Civil always lived trying to live up to expectations. However, after trying to use magic and failing so many times, he gave up until he touched his mana before. He couldn't use magic spells in his attacks. Now that he knows how to make things happen, he can keep practicing until he regains his power. Then he talks about his partners and returning to his old self, before mentioning how much he longed for something that could cure his boredom. At that moment, he receives a call from Grocer, who tells him that he's already prepared his order. Grocer informs him that he's obtained all possible information about Shinoyama Puka and his mother, Canon Shinoyama. Civil thanks him for the help and ends the call to return to their discussion. Then Solitaire is seen in an alley talking to a figure in silhouette and asking them to show him what's planned for the night. The next day, Iwa finds one of Rosorogi's reports on the century-old fire and gets ready to analyze the documents. As soon as he's about to do so, he remembers how things happened the previous night with their investigation. Turns out a strange person prevented them from entering the house to finish the investigation, and Iwa and Arazi try to use their police badges on the person, but soon realize the person is the actual caretaker of the house. With that, they return to the station to dig deeper into the case. Now that they've found their holy grail, Iwa is more than happy to finally get his hands on concrete information. Elsewhere, Lisa's employees ask her what she's planned for the next day. To their surprise, Lisa just says they're going to observe everything because she's curious to see how far Puka will go to achieve his peace. Moving to Takeru's side, he finds some video footage covering the abandoned warehouse during his investigation of the 3 troublemakers. Upon checking, he finds the fire-spitting bugs' umbrellas in the same building and starts wondering if the trio are the fire-spitting bugs the whole time. Just hours before the scheduled meeting time, Puka and his team get worried about what will happen since Taipei doesn't seem to show up. Currently, they have no idea who or where these 3 came from, but if Takeru sees them as a threat, then he'll send help. Then they talk about the rescue mission for Misaki and Iwa to get the real Puka, before thinking of a name to give the necromancer inside Puka to avoid confusion. After hearing several nonsensical suggestions, Puka finally decides to tell his friends the truth he's hidden from them until now. It turns out that his name was never that hard to pronounce, but there's always a trick to getting it right. Just as he's about to reveal the name his real parents gave him in the old world, Puka feels the real Puka changing location and decides to follow them. At the same time, Takeru and his people notice Sarah and Lulu leaving the building to go somewhere, so they decide to follow them. As for the last guy, Civil, he shows up at Puka's safe house and acts like he owns the place. When Takumi asks how he managed to get in without being noticed, the nutjob says he used the secret passage in the basement. After that, he warns Puka that he's there to make peace with him, not to fight, since few people understand him. From the way he talks, Puka feels that he's probably from his old world. But then the idiot starts talking nonsense about Puka getting his powers from his earthly mother, Canon Shinoyama, and Puka gets curious enough to ask for an explanation. Understand that the real Puka's mother is a descendant of the Elemental Eye clan, Canon Chalan Redrosal. Hearing that, everything clicks in his head, and the necromancer finally understands why he reincarnated into Puka's body after casting his spell. Even so, he's happy that his mother, the only person he couldn't save in his old world, found peace in the end, far from his terrible father. Misaki notices Puka shedding tears and asks what's going on. Puka wipes the tears from his face and concludes that he'll have to see Puka again. That said, he closes his face to 𝐂𝐴𝐵𝒄𝒊𝒆 and demands that he return the real Puka, his little brother. As soon as he hears everything the necromancer just told him, 𝐂𝐵𝒄𝒊𝒆 finally understands everything. The real Puka is in the little stuffed animal they stole. So that's it. Not that it matters now. So 𝐂𝐵𝒄𝒊𝒆 gets straight to the point. He tries to recruit the necromancer inside Puka to join forces with him so they can defeat the fire-spitting bug. Puka ignores the request and asks 𝐂𝐵𝒄𝒊𝒆 if he knows Arius Sabramon, since he claims to be from the other world. In response, 𝐂𝐵𝒄𝒊𝒆 says he doesn't know him personally since he's his bastard son. Minutes later, Takaru and his people notice Lulu and Suara approaching the safe house. Before they get far, Takaru tells Taipei to do whatever he wants with them, but then warns him that Suara is there for him to fight. Back at the safe house, 𝐂𝐵𝒄𝒊𝒆 tries to get Puka to join the organization again, but Puka condemns his methods and prefers to work with the solitaire. Hearing that, 𝐂𝐵𝒄𝒊𝒆 tries to blame Habak for acting alone, but Puka insults him by comparing him to the real Arius. Unable to continue rambling with his friend, 𝐂𝐵𝒄𝒊𝒆 urges Puka to show his true power. At that point, Puka summons skeletons from the floor and walls behind 𝐂𝐵𝒄𝒊𝒆 and uses their power to immobilize him. Shocked, 𝐂𝐵𝒄𝒊𝒆 does his best to discover Puka's true identity. After discovering that his power is necromancy, 𝐂𝐵𝒄𝒊𝒆 racks his brain a bit more until he finally discovers his name, the Corpse God. Not far away, Kotu feels the chill from the other day, but soon shows herself eager and ready to follow her leads. Just as she's about to do so, 𝐂𝐵𝒄𝒊𝒆 falls from a window of the safe house and plummets to the ground. Soon the fire-spitting bugs realize that the chaos has already begun, so everyone gets ready to implant their will into Lulu so they can hunt down the remaining bastards and burn them to death. On their way to execute their will, 𝐂𝐴 and his friends stop them to question them. To their surprise, however, the hypnotic effect that the fire-spitting bugs had on ordinary civilians soon wears off, and they return to normal. One of them asks 𝐂𝐴 some questions about the fire-spitting bug, and 𝐂𝐴 does his best to explain the story behind the concept. After that, the guy gets scared and gets ready to leave. However, 𝐂𝐴 stops him and explains the nature of the hypnosis used to implant the bug into his subconscious. Currently, the first generation of firebugs are all dead, but the true creators of these anomalies use this trick to continue spreading their will around the world. After hearing everything 𝐂𝐴 just said, the fire-spitting bugs take over the man's body and appreciate 𝐂𝐴 having done his homework right. 𝐂𝐴 doesn't stop there. Instead, he keeps trying to get the fire-spitting bugs to stop what they're doing and let the police find Sabaramon's bastards. When he talks about the solitaire watching the fight between 𝐂𝐵𝒄𝒊𝒆 and Puka, the necromancer Suara notes the big spark of energy that hit the sky about a second ago and leaves Lulu to go check it out. After fighting the first round with him, Puka discovers that 𝐂𝐵𝒄𝒊𝒆's magic is crude and amateur. Although the guy enhances his body well with magic, fighting with it seems hard for him. When it's his turn to speak, 𝐂𝐵𝒄𝒊𝒆 tries to make Puka feel guilty for not joining him, but Puka stays firm in his decision and gets ready for another attack. This time, Suara joins the fight and helps save her boss from being crushed by Puka's skeleton hands. Just as she's about to attack Puka with a spatula, 𝐂𝐴 appears to fight her. Lulu sees the explosion 𝐂𝐴 caused and starts praying for her elemental spirit to protect Suara. At that moment, she receives a warning from her great spirit, and soon she faces the fearsome Misaki and her vampire form. While they're at it, 𝐂𝐴 starts to slow down to thank Puka for being the savior of this world. He then tries to ask Puka to turn this boring world into one that suits their specialties, or better yet, send them back to the old world. At this point, 𝐂𝐵𝒄𝒊𝒆 starts to conjure spells that take shape. Puka notices this and gets worried about how quickly the guy managed to learn attack spells. So when the guy creates a good enough sigil, he sends a wave of fire to burn Puka. One of the bugs watching the fight nearby notices the fire and compares it to the incident that happened 100 years ago. Meanwhile, 𝐂𝐵𝒄𝒊𝒆 and Puka keep trading barbs about each other and the world they're in. 𝐂𝐵𝒄𝒊𝒆 insistently tries to get Puka on his team so they can revolutionize the world together, but Puka keeps refusing such an absurd request. Moving on to 𝐂𝐴 and Suara, their fight takes an interesting turn, especially when 𝐂𝐴 starts reading Ciara's movements more clearly, as they resemble those of the two-headed tiger. He pauses at one point to weigh his options, but ends up hurting himself in the process after receiving numerous blows to the head. From Lulu's elemental, Misaki gets up and demands that Lulu return the little plushie. Lulu, however, refuses to abandon her duty, and Misaki chuckles. Akumi notices the situation and gets worried about how the necromancer is going to handle things. happens just when he's about to lose hope. Pukka starts his legendary speech and makes sure 𝐂𝐴𝐵𝒄𝒊 hears every bit of info he has to tell him. When he finishes, he summons much stronger skeletons from the pits of hell, and warns 𝐂𝐵𝒄𝒊 that he'll regret the day he crossed his path. In another annoying flashback, the corpse god is seen in his old world, pouting and lamenting over his imperial friend's body right after having killed him. Moments later, the man's soul appears over his body to tease and mock Pukka for being a sore loser. While at it, the necromancer goes into a trance and finds the elemental that tricked him and made him kill his friends. After laughing for a quick second at finally having outsmarted the so-called wandering balcony, the elemental curses the corpse god and leaves him to suffer for his crimes for eternity. As soon as he comes out of the trance, he finds the soul of his friend floating over his body and hears him discuss how to cover up the crime he just committed, almost as if the man was trying to protect his killer from facing consequences. Initially, the corpse god didn't understand what his friend was trying to do, but soon it became clear what his imperial friend wanted him to do. In return, the friend asked the corpse god to live a long life and spend most of it ruminating on his sins. At the time, the friend's ghost said it as a joke, but it turns out the foolish necromancer took it way too seriously. Now that he's facing similar danger, the so-called corpse god is ready to die for someone else, and his friend's spirit isn't too happy about that. Having relived the past for a few moments, Pukka keeps watching 𝐂𝐵𝒄𝒊 talk about Pukka's reincarnation technique and the reasons for possessing someone like the real Pukka. As soon as 𝐂𝐵𝒄𝒊 finishes speaking, Pukka continues the fight and promises to possess his body after he's done with him. Meanwhile, Takumi has an emotional breakdown as he steps out of his comfort zone to hack into the city's sound system, just so he can talk to Pukka. When he finally manages to communicate, he calls Pukka and warns him not to underestimate them, especially now that he's got crazy ideas of returning Pukka's body and leaving the world to them. Up to that point, they'd gotten along really well, so leaving them now won't help anyone. For now, he needs to trust his friends for support and let them help him when he needs it. With that, Takumi cuts the city's power and shuts everything down to give Pukka some time to give it his all and destroy the bastard named 𝐂𝐵𝒄𝒊. After seeing what Takumi did to keep Pukka from being seen, 𝐂𝐵𝒄𝒊 gets the crazy idea to attack random places and kill some people just to put his opponent in a bind. Pukka already sees his trick, so before he can execute it, he releases all the gems he'd been accumulating, recharges his mana, and conjures even more powerful magic spells. 𝐂𝐵𝒄𝒊 notices Pukka's use of gems and wonders how he got so many gems in such a short time. Pukka also doesn't give him room to breathe, as he summons monsters from the underworld to keep him busy. While fighting the monsters, 𝐂𝐵𝒄𝒊 accuses the corpse god of spending Pukka's fortune just to buy many expensive gems. Pukka then tells him that he earned every cent he used to get the stones and never stole from the real Pukka's fortune. A few minutes after fending off the monsters, 𝐂𝐵𝒄𝒊 sees Pukka witnessing the death and destruction he caused, as there's no way to pretend it didn't happen. At that moment, Pukka reveals the truth behind the atmosphere they're in now. While 𝐂𝐵𝒄𝒊 was rambling non-stop, he created a temple larger than the one he made a few weeks ago. This time, the underworld temple covered the entire city, and the humans 𝐂𝐵𝒄𝒊 thought were real were actually zombies, fake humans made to fool the fool. Meanwhile, Taipei calls his boss to apologize for not being able to get close to the enemy and explains that the enemy somehow has him in their sniper's sights and is shooting at him to slow him down. At the same time, Iwa watches the fight between 𝐂𝐵𝒄𝒊 and Pukka, wishing the corpse god luck in his fight for peace. While their fight continues fiercely, 𝐂𝐵𝒄𝒊 and Pukka keep trying to get inside each other's heads, each judging the other. Pukka belittles himself, calling himself weak for allowing an enemy necromancer to control him and kill his best friend. Pausing the fight, he thanks his friend's spirit for still considering him a friend, even after everything he did to him in the past. While 𝐂𝐵𝒄𝒊 struggles to understand what Pukka is trying to say, Pukka summons the spirit of his best friend. Once the spell is complete, his imperial friend from a century ago appears with his other friends to fight for Pukka. After exchanging greetings with his old friend, the emperor of the fallen empire, whom 𝐂𝐵𝒄𝒊 calls 𝐵𝒏𝒄𝒊𝒆, advances to take Pukka's place in the fight. 𝐂𝐵𝒄𝒊 couldn't understand why the emperor would choose to fight for his killer, but accepts him into the fight anyway. Once they discuss the strategy, everyone disperses to fulfill their functions before the underworld calls them back. Meanwhile, Saltaire feels something strange in the air and tries to get the fire-spitting bugs to calm it. Then the bugs tell him that they need to burn down the entire city before another tragedy hits it. However, before they can do that, the ghost of one of their innocent victims appears and urges them to calm down and wait for the corpse god to finish his fight first before doing anything rash. At the same time, Iwa continues trying to get the bugs to stop their revenge while he helps them hunt down the remaining Saburaman sons. When the bugs ask how he plans to make them trust him, Iwa grabs him and tells them to copy their will onto him. But hey, this shocks even the bugs themselves, as that's the last thing they'd expect him to ask. As for Misaki, she keeps getting hit by various objects, while Lulu's elemental protects her. At one point in the fight, Lulu asks why she's trying so hard. Misaki gives him a half-assed reason and continues fighting his elemental. After taking a few more hits, Lulu finally discovers that Misaki is a vampire. Before she could do anything about it, Misaki rips the real Puka's spirit from her hands and takes it for herself. Sarah, on the other hand, is soon visited by lemmings, so she decides to increase her powers so she can fight 𝐂𝐴 and lemmings. While she starts increasing her power, 𝐂𝐴 notices her form and uses the power of his right arm to throw her far from the battlefield. At that moment, an earthquake happens, but everyone ignores it as they continue their fight. Approaching the end of their fight, Puka and his friends soon realize how powerful and intelligent 𝐂𝒏𝒄𝒊𝒆 is, as he seems to be approaching Arius' power every second. After defeating Suara, 𝐂𝐴 runs to Misaki to get the real Puka back, hoping that the real Puka can forgive him for neglecting him in the first place. While on his way, Misaki keeps dodging and defending against all of Lulu's attacks. When 𝐂𝐴 finally shows up, Misaki hands him the plushie and keeps delaying Lulu's elemental. At one point in the fight, Misaki discovers a new ability by turning one of the weapons thrown at her into bats. As the attacks continue, one of the spirits summoned by the Imperial friend appears to calm the elemental possessing Lulu. After mumbling some words from her time, the old lady strokes Lulu's head, happy to finally see her descendant one more time. Not far from there, Magari notices 𝐂𝐴's new arm and wishes she'd gotten rid of that prosthetic arm earlier. After seeing her brother whole, Bal thanks Magiri and proposes a truce until 𝐂𝐴 decides what to do with his life. As soon as 𝐂𝒏𝒄𝒊 realizes that Puka has stopped the elemental, he decides to go all out to take the victory home. After seeing him conjure a magic circle so colossal that it could only be from the original Arius, Puka decides to ask a few more favors from his friends before throwing in the towel. He asks the Imperial friend if he minds him using his life force and whatever's left of it, and the man says yes, since they've been dead and buried for a long damn time. After exchanging a few more encouraging words with the corpse god, the Imperial Lord finally summons all his courage and spiritual powers. With that, his friend uses a magic circle so colossal that it simply nullifies 𝐂𝒏𝒄𝒊𝒆 and causes an explosion of epic proportions. After hearing the boss beg the enemy to possess his mind, Arasi punches 𝐂𝐴 until he returns to reality. Fortunately, this works, and 𝐂𝐴 soon comes to his senses to avoid causing any more trouble. Eaten by their determination, the bugs decide to give a truce and see if Puka can really bring peace to the world the way they want, without taking or adding anything. If he succeeds, then they'll disappear from the map. At that point, they release their hypnotized victims and everyone returns to normal. Suara wakes up and finds herself fine on a rooftop, surrounded by the two-headed tigers. Tired of fighting, she decides to just chill with them. As for Puka, the necromancer, and 𝐂𝒏𝒄𝒊, they sit down and talk like normal humans for the first time in their lives. 𝐂𝒏𝒄𝒊 asks why he saved him, and Puka says he didn't want that redhead whining inside him. 𝐂𝒏𝒄𝒊 ignores the comments and warns Puka that he may bitterly regret this one day. Even so, Puka still promises to use his power to save everyone. No exceptions, just as he did now. At this point, 𝐂𝒏𝒄𝒊 gives up trying to go to the other world and decides to take a break in this one, which is much more boring for now. Around this time, Misaki managed to see her Puka, who's a blast again, and everything gets back on track. In the final scene of the film, Puka and his necromancer persona become targets of those who want him dead, and Lisa warns him to keep an eye on them.